Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. We have been talking about what philosophy is, introducing philosophy, talking about how to understand philosophy, why philosophy is important, why we should care about philosophy, and how we can understand how to do philosophy. We've been reading Plato's Parmenides, which is a text written by Plato about Socrates meeting his teacher Parmenides. We see the difficulties that Socrates has getting into philosophy, but we can see Parmenides outlining what those difficulties are in a way we can relate to ourselves. So he's giving us an introduction to the problems that might occur when getting into philosophy and talking about what the exercises would be to actually be doing philosophy. The exercise is called the dialectic. 4 basic exercises that leads into an ultimate exercise that we are reading about in Parmenides' own dialectic. The 4 exercises are about the realm of being, and this is what distinguishes philosophy for Parmenides and the Platonic tradition and the perennial or parent philosophy tradition before it broke off into many different opinions or different theories or personal philosophies that we see today. So what was the distinguishing factor about what makes philosophy philosophy? Being. What is being? Exactly. That's the question you seek to answer in your exercise. The exercise of the dialectic is the power of the logos. The logos is also what we're learning to discover. Something about reasoning, something about understanding, but also some kind of ladder that we climb as well. That is our way back home, way back to the self, way back to the realm of being. And therefore our way back to our destiny or our final cause. Thumbs up. Okay, I think when I do this, it gives me a thumbs up. So, we're discovering the logos. The use of the logos or the power of the logos is the dialectic. And Parmenides is pointing out the distinguishing feature that makes philosophy is the realm of being, which is something that is eternal. It has its own living existence. It exists in a non-physical way. All of these qualities about being that we pick up from the text and from anything else that we use to learn about Platonic philosophy, Plato's other texts, we bring together, we collect together into a dialectic. Dialectic has 2 parts, a what if universe if it does exist and a what if universe if it doesn't, and each of those 2 parts has 4 sections. That's what we have been talking about. So you might ask, well, okay, if what makes philosophy is understanding and climbing the ladder to enter the realm of being, which makes it a mystical tradition, by the way. What the heck is this realm of being? That question is your question. That's the subject of the first exercise. What is being? In fact, that's the first category in your first exercise. What is being? If being exists, what can you say about it? What qualities does it have? This is the understanding. As you go through this dialectic, you will have counterattacks. Voices in your head that says, stop doing this, shut up, give up, get out of here, do something else. You might have friends in your life that reflect a similar sort of thing. You might have just people that enter your life while you're engaged in this kind of activity or having this conversation. We feel compelled to intrude the same way those voices are compelled to intrude, even if you don't want them to. These are the objections or the counterattacks. Parmenides says this is what we have to be aware of while doing this exercise. We've talked about how you could even do a dialectic on those counterattacks to fully understand those as a way of freeing yourself from them in a process called philosophical midwifery, freeing ourselves from our own internal counterattacks. We haven't really gotten into depth into what exactly that is. We've been more focused on learning the logos and the dialectic itself and applying it to its higher, which is understanding the realm of being. But it does something special that Zeno and Parmenides, Zeno's as Parmenides students, point out as something that there's many people who have those objections. The many don't understand that it is this exercise of the dialectic using the logos that allows us to grasp beings, to grasp the ideas. Ideas, but idea in the Greek means to behold. You behold it with your mind and awaken your ousia, the sixth sense, you could call it, the sense that we have in our mind that normally lays dormant. Ousia is also the quality of those beings, so that's how we have a way of accessing this part of our soul that is already in the realm of being. So you could say it's a waking up or a remembering of what we already know. So that has been what we have been talking about. The exercises of the dialectic applied to being is how we exercise ourselves, and then Socrates comes in and says, oh, hang on a second. I want an example of a dialectic. Give me a dialectic, please. But Socrates doesn't pick one of the ideas of being, like beauty or justice, one of the aspects of the realm of being. He picks something else. He picks that which is higher than even being, the self. He wants Parmenides to give a dialectic, a new kind, so we could distinguish the first as Zeno's dialectics, or dialectics on being, which is what makes philosophy philosophy. If you don't accept, if you are not open to exploring and understanding and grasping the realm of being, you're not doing philosophy, you're doing opinions. That's the realm of becoming. So becoming is the physical world, everything is in change. So we see a lot of traditions that are interested in the world of becoming. We call it materialism, interested in material things, or empiricism, our senses that are directed to the physical world, ignoring the other sense, ousia. Stoicism, you could use the Platonic philosophy language, but take out the realm of being. Then you have a way of thinking we call Stoicism. There's lots of different ways, but we can put them all together under one category of Latin, or the Roman tradition. What we would call the modern tradition, but it's in the Roman or Latin lineage, separating from Platonic philosophy, which is in the Greek tradition. Distinguishing factor between the two of them is the Greeks have the word the, so they can talk about the things, which elevates it from a thing. The Latin tradition only has the word a, so they can talk about a apple, a beautiful thing, but they can't talk about the because they lack it in their language. The elevates as adjective to a noun, the thing itself. What is beauty itself, which is the realm of being. Now, why is that important to be aware of? Well, it's important to understand why we are where we are today, and that might even shed light into the objections or the counterattacks that come up as you get into this, as you go through the work, or the philosophical quest, the archetype of the true adventurer. So this could be important in that sort of sense. But it's also important to understand the significance of words, of names, of correctly naming things. Because we are also going to add new words. We are going to add words like ousia, which is that sense of the mind, the cognitive function, the ability we have within our own psyche or you could call it soul, that we need to awaken in order to grasp the realm of being. Ousia is the ability for mind to turn around upon itself and know itself. The exercise of the dialectic mirrors that in understanding. So you could say the dialectic is the most like the ousia, or the nature of being, that we can be in our physical world. Why? It's non-physical. So a physical thing can turn around upon itself, and some parts of your hand can touch other parts of your hand. But there are some parts like up here that can't touch down here. It's limited from turning about on itself more completely than reasoning and ideas can. So, using reasoning, using the logos, Zeno and Parmenides point out, it's a kind of movement or wandering that happens without the physical senses. In fact, Parmenides says to Socrates, okay, you're young, you're new to philosophy, I get that, but what you do have is an admirable spirit and desire for the logos. And I also like the way you wouldn't let Zeno talk about physical things, wander around in the physical senses, and all of the distractions that happen when you're interested in the physical senses. You didn't allow that when you were talking to my student Zeno. You wouldn't let him go that way. That's good, because the use of the logos in the dialectic takes you away from the physical senses. You're talking about thoughts, understanding, and the ideas. It's elevating you out of your physical senses to talk about things like, what would happen if beauty exists? What kind of a metaphysical world would that be? How would that affect the physical world? So you're reflecting upon yourself in the way that is least physical that can happen in this three-dimensional physical world. So it's through likeness that we are becoming like the realm of being. And that's the exercise that the many don't understand, and the many will call empty talk or useless, but we recognize is the most important thing you can do as a human being. Now, Socrates is not content with that. He wants an even better dialectic. So while these exercises on being, so if we did a dialectic on being, the first thing we would ask is, what is being itself? How does it affect something? Us? How does it affect its cause? Or let's say us, how does it affect something like us? And then how do we relate to each other, having been affected by beings? And then finally, the fourth category, how do we relate back to the subject? Given that beings exist, what do we do in relation to the beings? We could say, we do this. Exercise our mind, return to it every morning with our coffee. Understand it better and better, be more like Ousia ourselves. Because that's the way in which we can elevate ourselves to the realm of truth, as Parmenides calls it, the truth. So, as we're saying, Socrates isn't content with that. He wants an example, but he doesn't want one of Zeno's exercises. He's not he wants an exercise of the dialectic on the realm of the oneself. So, if we think of our reality as having three basic levels, the physical world, or the world of becoming, the world of being, in which the ideas are, or the archetypes or principles and forces and living and beings that are needed for the creation and the maintaining and the sustaining of the physical world. That could be the world, we call that the world of being. But also even the realm of being has certain principles or that are apply to all things within that level. Everything in that level is one. So that might mean that there's a higher level, an ultimate level of the one. Another way you could say it is, well, all those beings have their own existence. They're alive. They're intelligent. They're not dead. They're not dumb. They have some force. They have some effect in relation to each other and in relation to the physical world. So they are selves. So we say self-beauty or self-justice. So, again, They're all one, so maybe there's a realm called the One. Another way of talking about that ultimate realm is the Self. So that's the third realm. Becoming, being, and the Self. Socrates wants a dialectic on that. Parmenides says, "Take a hike, kid. That's too much work for someone as old as me." But he asks Zeno to do it instead. Zeno laughs and says, "No, let's get Parmenides to do it. That's what we really want to hear. If we want to really know the Self, you don't want some student, you want the teacher." Everyone joins in cheering, "Give us a dialectic on the Self." And he does. He says, he gives an introduction, which is part of it. "I'm going to be speaking from myself." What does that mean? To be functioning from the Self. Puzzle. We collect puzzles. Number 2, I'm going to give up hypothesis of the One Self. So that's the definition or the title of his dialectic. What are the two terms he's putting together in dialectic? Using one to understand the other and vice versa. One and Self. So I'm going to give my hypothesis from myself of the One Self. That's the first hypothesis that we've been reading. Then he says, "I'm going to give 4 more of what if you think the One exists," which takes it from the ultimate to the realm of being. What are the 4 possible ways of viewing the Self that is not my hypothesis that you could have if you think the One exists? And I'm going to give 4 alternatives of different ways or ways of missing the mark, ways of not getting the true Self if you think the One doesn't exist. If you're an atheist or you're a materialist or a relativist, or there are many ists within the category who don't think there's even a realm of being. That's the lower, which is the final 4 hypotheses. The higher, which is the 4 hypotheses after his ultimate. So, because of our exercise on the dialectic, we can recognize, if something exists, if something doesn't exist, and 4 categories. So we have an idea. Maybe it looks like the structure of the dialectic, if it exists, if it doesn't exist, 4 categories, is being used in a superstructure way for his 9 hypotheses, which is cool. We're looking for that. And we're starting at the top with his hypothesis on the One Self. So why do we care? Well, we want to know ourselves. We also want to reach the truth about the things we're interested in our lives. We're interested in beauty, we're interested in justice, we're interested in good. So wouldn't we want to know what those things are themselves? What is actually our goal? And reach it? So that's using the dialectic for the realm of being. We might recognize there's a lot of conflict, differing opinions, those who stay in the realm of becoming, they don't get to the paradigm, they don't get to what actually goodness is or what actually justice is. So we might think, well, it's a good way of helping the world, because this is kind of literally the only thing that can bring the world together, in that it's truth. If we are divided because we have differing opinions and ignorance, then what would be the remedy? The truth about something. And if the truth is universal, it's open to all. So by nature, it brings people together and unites. Which is interesting, because when Parmenides is saying this is what the dialectic is for, he said, collect yourself together. Collect thyself together. So not yourself, thyself, which is the highest expression. Like the maxim above the doorway at the Oracle of Delphi, or was it Apollo? Know thyself. A motto to live by. An imperative to live by. So, we can say, well, hang on a second. We know that the word self applies to all 3 levels of being because it's the ultimate. It has the greatest scope. It's at the top. So the beings are selves. The one self is a self, but everything in our physical world, I mean, we have selves here. I'm a self, you're a self. So what does he mean by collect thyself together? Well, this is a really interesting way of reading philosophy. Greek philosophy, Platonic Greek philosophy. There are certain words that apply multidimensionally, which is cool because the logos is such a thing. It has a multi-dimensional existence. That's why we can use it to communicate to or receive messages from the divine. And we apply the logos in our self-reflection. So how do we understand the ideas? Use the logos in the dialectic to understand them. How do we unpack the meaning of our dreams? Same thing, through the logos. How do we understand and remove our problems? Apply the logos to those problems. So logos is an understanding, an intellectual and graspable, knowable, so intellectual and intelligible thing that is multidimensional. So is the self. So when you come across the word autos in Greek, thankfully we have a translation with the Greek underneath the English. You can read it multidimensionally. Take all. If you're given many options, take them all. Keep them with you, see what pans out, right? So, collecting thyself together, what does that mean? How can the dialectic, which is the use of our highest functioning as a human being in the physical world, our logos reasoning, right? Not just scientific reasoning, logos reasoning, just a higher existence, use of the highest qualities of our physical world. How is that, in its highest method, the dialectic, how is the highest functioning of a human being in the physical everyday world? How is that collecting thyself together? Well, if it's the strategy to reach the truth about the things that we are in conflict about, as an individual, in our relationships, as a human species, you could say it's the method of collecting the self of the physical world together, collecting selves together, because it's that which can unify the world. Unify because it's to do with truth. It's the truth of things. But also it brings us to our good. You can unify your own self individually. Why? Well, you might recognize that everything you do is because you think it's good in some way, or you think you'll be made better. Well, actually, what is better? Or what is the good? If everything we do is somehow because we think it'll be good for us, what is the good itself? Wouldn't it make sense to find the thing you're really after? Not just you're really after, but you're always after in everything you do? Wouldn't it be great to find that? Wouldn't it unify your functioning? Wouldn't it unify your direction, your focus? So you're unifying your own self. You could apply self to the realm of being. Or would you be unifying all the beings through the dialectic by understanding how they all exist, in what way they all exist, why they must exist, what would happen if they didn't exist, and how they all relate to each other? So you're unifying all of the many different ideas. Like, what is being? What is justice? What is goodness? What is truth? What is reality? What is soul? What is mind? You're going to unify all of those into the realm of being. Because, as Socrates says, this is Socrates' puzzle coming in, how can these ideas, which are many, be one? That's an answer that you only get if you do this exercise in the dialectic. Because there are many ideas, many beings, but they are one. It's a single mystical experience. It's a single metaphysical dimension. So it's one, a oneness, in fact. That's people who experience it. That's one of the most common words they use to describe it. Amazing oneness. I realize that we're all oneness. I realize that humanity needs to see its oneness. So how do we see that the many beings are all one as well? Unifying the selves of being. So we've talked about unifying human cells in the physical world of becoming and individual cells, unifying your own focus and direction. We've talked about unifying the selves in being, collecting thyself together in that sense. So what would be collecting the selves together of the ultimate? Well, collecting thyself together, that's what we're doing in Parmenides. Applying the dialectic to the ultimate. What is the one self? Collect all of those other things we've learned. Specifically, let's use all of the ideas of being, the self of likeness, the self of unlikeness, the self of whole, the self of part, the self of motion, the self of rest. Use those to collect together to understand the one self, the ultimate. But also it's the ultimate, but it's the most immediate. It's the most personal. The self, yourself, is the most immediate, personal, intimate, direct. But as a thing, experience, okay. This is why we need the dialectic. You couldn't call it a thing because it doesn't have shape. We've seen this. It's the most direct experience. Oh, it's not an experience. We said that because experience is something to do with experiencing same or different, and it can't be that. So experience is something to do with likeness. Oh, I can't say that. So this is what we're doing. We're developing a language to talk about our ultimate goal. Because we saw how important our language is. Hey, a simple misstep in our language, not having the word the, in the Roman tradition, the modern tradition, has really cut ourselves off at the knees. That's how important a single word is. It's so important. Oh, and by the way, when we do read Plato, we often mistranslate the word ideas from the Greek meaning to behold the realms of the selves of being to a concept, which is literally the opposite. It's the physical expression. It's literally Socrates' problem coming in. He was relating it to the concepts, and Parmenides says, no, it's not concepts. You're missing the mark. Kind of like Aristotle did. Plato's one of the students in Plato's academy. So our lineage kind of follows Aristotle's thinking, who missed the mark. I mean, that's another story for another day, but so we've seen how a simple mistranslation, so not just not having a word like and the, cuts you off from metaphysics, cuts you off from the logos. How important is that? Well, if the logos is the method to reach the truth and the destiny of humans, and it's the method for understanding human problems, how important is it that we have this word? A single word. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
We think about, well, hang on a second. How can you say it's the method for solving problems? Well, think about anything, literally anything else. If you have a broken carburetor, is there the method for replacing the carburetor? Or can you just do anything you like? Change the gas plug, spark plug, pour more petrol in, will that fix it? Or is there an understanding of the cause of the problem and a single thing you need to do to fix the problem, replace the carburetor or fix the carburetor? Right? Same thing with math. How many answers is there to 2 + 2? Okay? Unless there are those who are, like Zeno was, interested in contention and want to argue for the sake of argument, they'll say, oh, well, actually, I have a theory that actually 2 and 2 isn't 4, it's actually 7, and let me show you. We know that they're not good faith actors. They're not, they're interested in arguments or, whatever they're interested in. It's not truth. So same thing to problems, right? If there is a logos, which is a dialectic you could do, if the logos exists, what would follow? Well, you could say, well, if the logos exists, then there is a understandable pattern that can be applied even to our problems, making human problems solvable. If the Logos exists, you can apply it also to our metaphysical, philosophical quest, human quest to know being. So beings is understandable and reachable. It's not something you have to pray for and hope you get when you die. You can reach it if the Logos exists. If the Logos exists and it extends to all three dimensions or realms, then you can use the Logos to apprehend the nature of the ultimate, the cause even of being, the goal of our existence, to know the self. That's what we're doing in Parmenides' first hypothesis that we've been reading, using the Logos to know the self. So, you missed that if you don't have the word for the. If there is no the Logos, there's just personal opinions. That is the significance of a single word, right? We lose our ability to solve problems, we lose our ability to know being, to know truth, and we lose our ability to reach our highest destiny. Oh my goodness. This is the significance of the tradition that we're in, the modern tradition. Okay, well, let's talk about not just not having a word, but misunderstanding, not being accurate with our language. Well, the word idea has been mistranslated for a long, long time as concept, as idea. Kind of sounds very similar, right? Idea. Literally, the problem we've seen Socrates have as a new philosopher. It's a very common problem you have as a new philosopher. If you have little experience or awareness of the realm of being, you kind of relate things to what you know. And if all you know is the physical world and concepts, that's kind of how you use to make sense of things, which is normal, right? We use what we're familiar with to understand what we're unfamiliar with. This is how we think. This is analogy. Analogy uses this. It's how we think. You want to understand something complicated, like how a king would relate to his people? Or understand something simple that you are familiar with. How does a shepherd relate to a sheep? As a shepherd relates to a sheep, you use what you can see here to understand the greater, how a king would rule his people. This is how we think. And a good teacher like Parmenides has been using these sorts of analogy to help us learn as we go. So, if all you're familiar with is physical concepts and you don't know the way in which it's different from the realm of being, because you haven't gotten into Parmenides yet, you won't know how it's different. So an analogy, some things are same about how a shepherd helps a sheep, as it is to a king and his people, but some things are different. Some same, some different, likeness. It's not the same, it's like it. So likeness is one of the Selfa terms, one of the principles in reality, and it's one of the principles in thought. So, likeness means you got to recognize what's different about it. What's the same? Well, there are same ideas, there are same words like likeness and unlikeness, motion and rest. We have expressions, we have a example of motion, a example of rest in our physical world. But how are they different? This is what we have to see. This is what Parmenides points out to us. Hey, by the way, they're different. So you're stuck on a problem. How can unlikeness and likeness be same and different at the same time? It's a good question, but the reason you're stuck is, he says, you care too much about human opinions, but also you think ideas are concepts. You need to recognize the difference. It's good that you're recognizing the sameness, but you also have to recognize the difference. The king is not the same as a shepherd. He doesn't actually feed grass to people the way a shepherd feeds grass to sheep. So how is it different? Well, the difference of idea is it's not a concept, it's to behold. It means to behold, to use your mind to hold or experience something. This is the experience of knowing. We hear Socrates talk about, I'm only wiser This is one of those quotes that's often mistranslated on Facebook or something, or social media. I am the wisest man. The oracle at Delphi called me the wisest man in Athens. Well, I am only wisest. This is what you get on Facebook. I am only wisest because I know nothing. Right? And people interested in only the realm of being who want to reject the realm of being. Sorry, they're only interested in the physical world, who kind of see that way and they reject the realm of being. The greatest problem, says Parmenides. They take that as evidence that there is no such thing as knowing. But the actual quote is, I'm only wiser because I know what is knowing. So I will not be convinced. I will not be mistaken. I will know what I don't know. I'm only wiser is that I will not mistake something that is unknowable for being known. Which means he has an awareness when he made that quote of what knowing is. Knowing is to behold directly with your consciousness or your mind or soul or ousia. That's being. So being pertains to knowledge. And that whole idea, that whole concept is contained within the word idea. To behold is to know the beings. So, just as we have these terrible problems that we are at the level of evolution or level of development that we are here to overcome, when you don't have a certain word, you don't have the word the, so too do you have problems if you don't have a good translation of the word, if you mistranslate, so you're not accurate with your language, if you do not translate idea as behold, and you mistranslate it as concept, the way it's done very often in our current time, you're missing all of metaphysics. You're chopping philosophy off at the knees. Right? And what's interesting is you are chopping it off at the knees in a similar way the Latin tradition does, the modern tradition does. So the same problem is reflected in its original problem, in the way it translates things, in the way it relates to things. So we have that trickling down. We have that just as the logos reflects itself on multiple levels and dimensions, so too does the anti-logos or the mistaken logos. That's why we can use the logos to travel both ways to the cause to oneself or the cause of our confusion or our problems. So that's cool. So we're seeing the importance of having words, having an accurate definition of words. And we're really seeing the height of that, defining and naming and defining as precisely as possible in the first hypothesis of Parmenides. He is using words so specifically that our job is to look out for slight clues. Where does he use the word unspecifically? Where does he fail to define it accurately? If he does that, it's a clue for something. We have our Sherlock Holmes hats on. Okay, where does he define the word differently than he did before? Where are the slight variations in either the words or the definitions? We've seen the significance historically. All of the war and conflict, or the uncollecting together of thyself, the ununified selfness of our physical world, with just a missing word or just a poorly translated word. Historically, we've seen it. It's amazing, the consequence. Similarly, in the Logos, there is that great consequence. If you understand the word whole a certain way, if you understand the word unlimited in a certain way, it makes all the difference between the realm of being and the realm of the ultimate. If you understand experience a certain way, if you understand participate in a certain way, you have to get so precise. But that's cool because when you see it, you can see it. Once you see it, you can see through it. That's the leveling up. Once you can see the patterns, how he's using the words specifically, you can use it to recognize your ultimate goal, the one self. And because we haven't just jumped into that experience through luck or other techniques people use to have a mystical experience or go beyond the mystical experience, if the ultimate is beyond experience, because we've climbed that mountain through our own development of the logos, through the dialectic, it's ours. We can take our logos with us. We can take our understanding with us. We can recognize the counterattacks or the objections. We can recognize where we're at because we have an understanding of being, and we can recognize something that would be even more foreign to us when we encounter the one self, which is different from anything. It is simply different. It's different in a way there can never be anything the same as it. That can be, scary. That can be off-putting. That can be troubling. It can be confusing if you don't recognize it. Hey, go to a football game without any understanding of what a tackle is, what a scrum is. Okay, I'm talking about rugby. What a scrum is, what a pass is, what a try is. Look at that for a few seconds. How would you talk about it? Oh Lord, these people were fighting each other. They looked like they hated each other. It was a mess. It was scary. I don't want to go back. Oh my God, this is terrible. But if you have that language, if you have that logos of rugby, you can recognize it. That's what they're doing. You can see the beauty in it. That was a beautiful play. You can recognize excellence. That player was playing really well. The best I've ever seen a player play. He had excellence. You see justice. The referee was really just in his decision making. And you can learn from it. You know what? I learned how to be a better rugby player myself because I saw this great rugby player make this decision or do this thing. Same too for our logos of being and the self. You won't be scared by your experience of being or your encounter of the one self. You won't be put off, or you'll be least likely to be, because you have an understanding. You can recognize, this is a strange kind of different that's unlike anything else that I've ever experienced that different, specifically because there can't be anything the same as it. It's impossible. That's one of the kinds of ways that Parmenides has been talking about the one self. What kind of a whole is it? What kind of a part is it? Is it at motion? Is it at rest? How would you describe these things? Is it at rest? Is it at motion? Does it have a shape? It doesn't have shape. But in what way does it not have a shape? Because it doesn't exist? Because it's a scary, tricky demon trying to confuse you? Or is there a completely rational and obvious and simple and necessary reason why it doesn't have shape? So we can do the same things we did with rugby when we had a logo. So rugby to the self. Recognize it, understand it, benefit from it, see its qualities, see its excellence, see its beauty. That's why we're doing it. And if we gain those kinds of benefit from the realm of being, recognizing being itself, recognizing truth, recognizing knowledge, then we are leveling up, really, if we're applying that same level of logos, understanding, recognition, development to the ultimate, beyond even being. If those are the kinds of benefits we get from being, imagine the kinds of benefits we would have from the ultimate quest, the end of the ultimate level of enlightenment or personal development or philosophical growth, being able to see, apprehend, function with, benefit from, recognize, know the self. The self that's beyond and the cause of even being. That's what we're after. That's what we should be after. That's what Socrates, even Socrates at 19, who's new to philosophy, went straight for the top. Why not? Why limit yourself? Hey, Parmenides, I want an example of dialectic, but the self, please. That's what I want. I'm more interested in the self than I am in beauty, justice, goodness, infinity. You can use those terms, but use infinity to talk about the self, please. Good for Socrates. That's a pretty cool way of being, right? Aim for if you can get benefit from the being, get the ultimate benefit from the ultimate term. And that's what we're doing it for. To benefit ourselves in the ultimate way. Collect ourselves together in the ultimate way. So, I hope we're doing exercises, even in our own thinking. Whenever we're interested in anything, specifically if we find out something about any of the ideas that we come across in our reading. Oh, that's an interesting way that Parmenides describes sameness. Oh, I never thought about sameness in that way. I'm going to add that insight that I got from this section on sameness in Parmenides' first hypothesis. I'm going to add that to my own dialectic on sameness. So you're building up, you're returning to your dialectic. Ousia, returning again, going through it again, and you might discover something when you apply your new insight to your dialectic. You might come up with a new and even newer insight about sameness after you finish your exercise. Take that back to the start and apply it again. Ousia, the highest direction, ousia, with the highest functioning, logos, in the highest way, dialectic, applied to the highest things, the ideas and the ultimate. Can't get higher than that. And we're getting the highest from Parmenides in the first hypothesis. That's what we're reading. So, with that introduction out of the way, let's jump in. So far we have been seeing a bunch of key terms being accurately defined. Sameness, difference, motion, rest, shape, form, existence, whole, part. All of these sort of ideas are being accurately defined. So they're being introduced. We saw what happens when we don't have them. So we got to make sure that, given that we've just seen how important key terms are, like art and the, we better make sure he's introducing all of the necessary key terms. So we're getting a list of key terms. We've seen how important it is to accurately define words like idea and the tragic consequences that it's had to the whole of human history just having a word mistranslated like idea as a concept. Great betrayal to humanity and philosophy. So we better apply that standard to Parmenides. Not only is he getting the right terms, but he's accurately defining them. He's not mistranslating them. So we're getting an accurate set of terms, an accurate definition of terms. Now, how is he using those terms together? If there are pairs of terms like same and different, how is he using them together? How do they relate to each other? And then, so defining, giving the term itself, accurately defining them, showing how they function together to get that accurate definition, accurate seeing, and then also how does he apply it back to his argument? If he says, I want to show that the one self doesn't exist, I'm going to define this term. I'm going to give an accurate demonstration of what it means. I'm going to give an accurate division of an explanation of that definition. I'm going to relate it back to my subject to explain the one self. So, key terms, key translations, key explanations, and also keeping in mind the focus. Keep your focus, keeping in mind the goal and applying everything you do to the goal. That's collecting thyself together. We talked about when you recognize that everything you do is for one goal, the good, why not have that goal? Why not find what the good is? So keeping in mind your goal or keeping in mind your focus. The term, key explanation of the term, the key reasoning to explain the definition of the term or the demonstration of the term, and then applying it back to what you're after ultimately. So we're using the 4 categories of the dialectic in our understanding of the dialectic and even the parts of the dialectic, each argument. We're exercising ourselves, we're leveling up, we're unifying our thinking, we're practicing it, we're applying it, we're making it ourselves, we're making it our own, we're making it ourselves. We're collecting thyself together. So let's look for that as we go. Let's jump into where we are. Whoa, Jarvis, what have you done here? Jarvis, please fix the screen. Thank you. So we finished with equal and unequal. Does the oneself participate? If it does, it's either participating in equal measure or unequal measure. And within unequal, lesser and greater than a measure. We said you can't do either. That's where we were. The self is not equal nor unequal to itself or another. Okay. Number 9. So we saw keywords participate like we saw keywords experience. So something about measures, equal, greater, lesser, and equal, to do with participation. And we concluded accordingly then, our conclusion, we look for ara, looks like appa. Ara. Appa is the flying bison that the Avatar Aang flew around on. Takes him home. Takes us to our goal. Accordingly then, it will neither participate of one measure nor of many, nor of few. For that which in no way participates of the self can ever be equal. The one self does not participate of the self, as it is likely to itself or another. Doesn't participate to itself or another, nor in turn be greater or less than itself or another. So there's our 2 alternatives, self, another. Here are the options, equal, greater, or lesser, and to do with participation. What next then? Aristotle agrees. What next then? Do you believe that the one has to possess the power to be older or younger, or the same age? So now we're on to age. Is there any reason why not? Since on the one hand, if it somehow has the same age, self same age, okay, there's that tricky thing. Sometimes the word self means same in Greek. If it somehow has the same self age as self, or as another, then it will participate of the equality and likeness of time. Equality and likeness of time, the 2 keywords we've just defined. It can't have equality, and what was the argument before that? Can't have likeness. And what was before that? Same. So we can see a progression. We had a progression in our arguments, and we can have a progression in our use. If you're familiar with this structure, you can use it to think and argue, and not argue, to have dialectics, to converse. We showed that the self can't be same or different. We showed that it can't have likeness. We showed that it can't have equality. We saw how you can't be the same as yourself, because that's 2 things. You can't be the same as another. Again, that's 2 things. That's many. The one is not many. You can't be different from yourself because then you wouldn't be yourself anymore. And you can't be different from another because, again, that's relative to two things. So, actually, let's nail down the arguments he used for if you are other than yourself, you're other than one, so you're not one. If you're the same as another, you're not the self, but the other one. If you're another from another, that's two things. It's not simply other. If you're the same as yourself, you would not be one with yourself. So again, the idea of one. So it's not the same, it's not other or same than self or other. So we can use that, build on our logos. And we saw that, by the way, likeness is that which experiences the same, which we just ruled out. And equality is that which somehow participates in the same measure. Or other measure, different measure. So, if it somehow has the same age as self or another, then it will participate, we talked about participation, of the equality and likeness of time, of which we said the one did not participate. That is, of neither likeness nor equality. Okay, he just said what I said. Maybe I'll read it first before I summarize, because he just said my summary. Yes, we did say that. We heard it twice. We also said that it certainly does not participate of unlikeness or inequality. Of course, the other side, by all means. How then, by being, so it's a kind of being, inverted commas, of such an, because not being in the realm of being, how then, by being of such a nature, can it be either older or younger, or of the same age as a thing that it has to be, as such a thing that it has to be? In no way whatsoever. Accordingly then, so ARA has been shortened to AR apostrophe. We've abbreviated a 3-letter word, saving ourselves time. Accordingly then, the one could not be indeed be younger nor older, nor have to be of the same age as self or another. Two terms, we can relate it to itself or another. And there's our triad of older or younger, or inequality, lesser and greater, and equal. Lesser, greater, equal, that's a triad that we used in a previous argument. Applied to age, younger, older, or the same age. Make sense? It has not come to light that the one could be younger or older or the same age as itself or another. Take notice then, neither can it be possible for the one to be in time at all. If it must be such as this. For if some entity were to be in time, then in that case, must not self necessarily, for all time, be growing older than itself? If self were in time, wouldn't it be growing older by progressing through time? Is getting older? Is what it means to be older? To progress through time? Right? Necessarily, of course. Is it not so then that the older is indeed always growing older than the younger? So we can recognize something. Two terms that are a pair, either an equal pair like left or right, or a lesser greater pair like whole and part, or part and whole, right? Key terms that are going to be leaned on, that are being defined in relation to each other. How do you define older? Well, you're growing older than the younger. How simple, how beautiful and elegant when you have those key terms and you can see that they're a pair. You can actually define one in reference to the other. What's that like? Having two key terms that are closely related, that you can define one by using the other? Isn't that the dialectic? Are we defining two key terms, one and self, that are so closely related? And are we defining one in relation to the other to understand the one self? The very thing we're doing in the whole, we're doing in the parts. Isn't that cool? Isn't it cool that these principles work in this way? This is the universe that we're in. We're in such a universe that everything we see has some combination of two of these pairs. It's either older or younger. It's either at rest or in motion. It's either a part of something or the whole of something. Everything is either, and it's usually both, right? Like a nut on your, like a hubcap is part of a tire. So you could say a tire is a hole that has the hubcap, but also the tire is part of the car. Car is part of transport system. Everything is a whole and a part. And also you're always younger than someone or older than someone. You're both. Always. So there are fundamental principles that everything fundamentally participates in, and you can understand them as kind of pairs. Not only that, you can understand each of those things in reference to its pair if you acknowledge the pair. Oh, what does older mean? Oh, it means you're older than something else that would be younger than you. Oh, cool. I get it. Isn't that cool? These all-pervasive, fundamental terms that are necessary for our physical universe, because everything in the physical universe has them in some mixture. They happen to have an eternal existence in being. So they're graspable, they're knowable directly, which is cool. But also, if you not only know them or familiar with them, but you understand them in this way, you can recognize, you can pull them up, you can see how they're a pair. But not only can you define one in relation to the other, you can use this combination in a really special way to talk about you, the thing you're here to find, or remember, or recognize, or discover. That's what we're doing in the first hypothesis. It's so simple, but it's so pervasive. Just like the self. So simple. It's so simple. By definition, it's the most simple because it's a kind of one that doesn't have parts. You couldn't get more simple. But it's most pervasive. We're all a self. That's how come it can collect humanity together, collect thyself together in every realm. So what are we seeing? A kind of transcending of opposites here. It's the most pervasive, but it's the most simple. It's the most immediate, but it's the most transcendent. The self. I think that's really cool. And these terms, older and younger, are an example of a pair of principles that are pervasive, but you can use them if you understand them in a special kind of way in the first hypothesis to learn something about the self, which is our goal. Let's keep going. The older is indeed older or younger, always growing older than the younger, of course. Accordingly then, certainly, what next? Come on, man, of course. Accordingly then, ara, that which is growing older than itself is also at the same time growing younger than itself, if indeed it must possess that which grows older then. Okay, if older is being defined relative to something younger, you're growing older than something you're younger than, something younger than you. Then if you're growing older than yourself, then you also must be possessing at the same time that which it grows older than. What do you mean? The following. It is in no way necessary for one which is different from another to become different by being already different. Thus, on the one hand, by being already different from that which it is already different to. Whereas, on the other hand, it will have become different from that which has become different. And furthermore, it is going to be different from that which will become different. Whereas, that which is in the process of coming to be different can neither have become different nor be about to become different, nor be different, but is simply coming to be different and not be in another way. Aristotle says necessarily so. We say, come on, Aristotle, that's crazy. We say,
What?
And we say,
what in the heck are we talking about here?
so he's really breaking down what he's using different. So he's recognized that being in time means older and younger. Older and younger are different to each other. That's how you define them. And now he's saying he's putting it into time by becoming different. So it's a process happening through time. Already different at the end. Thus, on the one hand, by being already different. Whereas on the one hand, it will have become different. So that's the past. So you're already something. You become something. Something that happened in the past. And furthermore, going to be different is the future. From that which it will come to be different in the future. Whereas that which is in the process of coming to be different will neither have become in the past, nor about to be in the future, nor be yet in the present, but simply come to be. So in some sort of process of coming to be. So you're not yet different if you're in the process of coming to be different. If you are different, you're different in the present. If you were different, then you where is it? Have become different in the past. If you're going to be, you're about to be different. Okay, so past, present, and future. Tied to, in relation to, connected in a dialectic to, a single term, different. So different in relation to time. So you could say this is a mini dialectic with the first term. Dialectic has two terms, self and other. The self of the self or subject of the dialectic being time, and the other, the key term you're picking out for your exercise, different. So you could mythologically represent that. You could say, the Fantastic Four are a group of 4 superheroes. So, again, a cool thing about mythology is make them super. You don't have to, but it's often a good idea to make them super. It distinguishes them from the physical everyday to something significant, honorific, or being supernatural, metaphysical. So make them super. So the Fantastic Four, group of 4 superheroes. You want to make a movie about them. What do? Well, what are you comparing them to? Okay, what would be another? Who's an enemy of the Fantastic Four? Oh goodness, I don't even know. Magneto? Okay, let's pick Magneto. Actually, I'm going to waste a few seconds of time. Find out Fantastic Four main villain. Dr. Doom. Okay. Dr. Doom. Thank you, Jarvis. This is Dr. Doom. And these guys here are the Fantastic Four. These guys in the bottom, stone guy, the guy with the white sideburns, the lady, and the dude. Here we go, Fantastic Four. All right, thank you, Jarvis. That was a good tangent and a waste of time. That's why I did it. It's actually profound, not silly. Because we're talking about time. So, represent time by the Fantastic Four in your mythology. Represent the other that you're comparing it to by Doctor Doom. And you got yourself a movie. Or a mythological representation of this principle or this dialectic that we're seeing within the first hypothesis. It's a dialectic within a dialectic. So what do we do? We define the terms and then we relate it to something. So here we've got, okay, how are we going to understand time? Well, we've already said that time, we're defining, the first category is self to self. What can you say about time itself? Time itself. Well, time is somehow participating of age. Equality and likeness of time is either participating in the equality or likeness or the sameness of age. So we can't do that because it does not participate in unlikeness or inequality or likeness or equality. Another way of saying that is if you're in time, you're either younger or older than self, or than yourself or others. And that's another way of saying these four categories here. So we've got in the past. So we've got Doctor Doom is different, or that's the other. And the four aspects of time are the four Fantastic Four. What are they? Past, present, future, and coming to be. Make them four characters. Make them the Fantastic Four. And then relate each of them to Doctor Doom. Relate each of them to different. So that's just how you can use mythology to remember this argument. You want to understand how past or having become different relates to different. Make a little story about how Mr. Fantastic, who represents past, relates to Doctor Doom, who represents different. You want to know how coming to be in the future, which is an aspect of time, relates to different. Make a story about the Fantastic Four member, Invisible Girl, how she relates to Doctor Doom. All right, that's mythology. So we have four aspects of time being understood in relation to different, self to other, two terms. Let's keep going. It can't be any of them. Oh, wait. Well, this is the definition. But certainly that which is older is simply a difference or distinction in relation to the younger and to nothing else. Reiterating our definition. That's what older means. So it is. Accordingly then, that which is becoming older than itself must necessarily at the same time becoming younger than itself. If it's relation to itself, it's both. That's what it means to be older. Seems likely. But certainly neither can it also come to be in more or less time than itself. Whereas it must be and become and have become and about to be, there's our Fantastic Four. It must be present, become future, have become, become the process. So be it present, become process, have become past, about to be future, for an equal time with itself. Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Girl, The Thing, and Fire Dude. I think that's his name, Fire Dude. But surely, neither can it come to be in more or less time than itself. It must be and become and have become and about to be for an equal time with itself. So if it's in relation to itself, it has to be equal to the time with itself. It can't be older or younger. So time to do with equal and younger and older, sorry. Can't be more or less time because that would be older and younger. So if it can't be older and younger, it has to be equal time. And so we have to apply these four aspects of time or processes to equal time. It can't be in more or less time than itself. Accordingly then, is it necessary? Oh, so by the way, interesting thing, Aristotle says, for this is also necessarily the case. Okay, so one cool thing about the dialectic is we're developing a precise language, precise definitions, precise demonstrations and divisions, and reasoning and stuff. Precise language, precise terms and definition. Now, we're also using that in a good way. We're good adventurers. We're not using the logos for, as Zeno did early in his years, a love of fighting or contention, love of honor, doing something honorable. So how do we use this key names and key definitions in a happy way, in a balloon way? Aristotle says it is necessarily the case. Well, that's a key term. See how Parmenides starts with appa, accordingly then, but then picks up the word that Aristotle uses. He takes him with him. That's your language. That's the word that you're using. Let's roll with it. It's a way of unifying. Like we are unifying ourselves together with these key terms. We're rolling with it. We're bringing it with us. Accordingly then, is it necessary? So that's a cool, fun thing to recognize in the use of the logos once you have mastered it, as Parmenides has. It's necessarily the case. Accordingly then, is it necessary, as it is reasonable, that each self that exists in time and which indeed participates of such an existence has to be of the same age as self and at the same time also become younger, older, and younger than self. So, if you're saying, let's go back to the start and let's nail this down. So we've got our categories. Older, younger, or same age is in time. The one, this is what, so that's his opening statement. And then he's in Euclid's geometry, the next stage would be to make it more specific. So this would be the enunciation in Euclid, the first part of the proposition. This is what I want to achieve. The next step in Euclid is specification, so making it more specific. So here he's saying, okay, this is a definition. Let's be more specific. The one could not be younger or older, or the same as self and other. Two options. Younger, older, same age, self or older, self or another. So those are the options. If it's one self, then it would be in time growing older than itself. If it's just one, then the thing you're growing older than is itself. Because you always have to be growing older relative to something, but there's just one self. Accordingly, then, that which is growing older than itself is at the same time growing younger than itself. Okay? This is what the absurdity that follows. Self growing older or younger than itself. If it was one, has to possess that which is growing older than, if it's all in self. So it's no way necessary for the one that is different from another to become different. So again, he's saying, oh, by the way, older and younger, that's another way of saying different age, different measure of age. So we can simplify it. Different. So if you're in time, you're either past, present, or future, or in the process of becoming different, older or younger. Because that which is older is simply a distinction in relation to the younger. So that which is becoming older than itself must also be becoming younger than itself. But surely neither can it come to be in more or less time than itself. It must be and become and have been about to be for an equal time with itself. Hey, if this is happening in relation to itself, then it's somehow equal time to itself. The self is participating. If it's to itself, then you're in the same time as the thing. Accordingly, then, is it necessary that each self that exists in time, and which indeed participates of such an existence in time, has to be of the same age as itself, and at the same time also become younger and older than self. Okay, so we've seen that younger and older is in relation to something, and if we're talking about itself, then it's becoming younger and older than itself, but also you're still participating in the same amount of time as itself, so it's still equal than itself. By definition, you're still yourself. So it would be all three. But surely the one cannot indeed participate of such experiences. Participate in experiences. We talked about lesser, greater, and whole, lesser, greater, and equal, and that relates to participate. Older, younger, and equal. You're seeing those terms here. Participate. We've seen participating in same and different is another word for experience. What are we doing? Same or different time. So not only are we using same and different, experiencing same and different for likeness and unlikeness, we're pulling that together with the term experience. Here we go. Experience. Okay? And not only are we using our greater, lesser, equal triad, we're pulling that together with participate. So the previous arguments are now ours. We can use them. When we can think of triads, lesser, greater, and equal, that's kind of to do with participation, right? When we think of experiencing same and different, that's unlikeness and likeness. That's kind of to do with experience. So we have some paradigmatic way, archetypal or a foundational way of understanding participation and experience in relation to that duad and triad. The triad, lesser, greater, and equal, participate. Duad of like and unlike, or experiencing same and different. We can use it. Same age, different age. Using that to understand older, younger, and equal age. So we're tying it together. Isn't that cool? We're building upon our own understanding. Starting from scratch, and we're building our understanding. We're getting terms we can use now. We're bringing Aristotle along. We're bringing everyone along. Not jumping at the end and saying, hey, this is my opinion. This is my belief. God is this. And therefore you have to obey these commandments. We're not doing that. We're saying, hey, start from scratch. Simple. What's the simplest ideas? One of many. Okay. Now let's follow together, collecting ourselves together through reason and the logos, develop arguments that have to be necessarily so So it's not a matter of opinion or power or authority or manipulation, necessarily so, building upon each other to develop see more and more about our subject. So we can develop what we saw in lesser, greater, and equal to participate. So what we say for likeness and unlikeness, experiencing same and different, to experience itself. Accordingly then, self does not participate in time, nor does it exist in any time. There we go. We saw existence earlier as well. Surely then, we cannot, such cannot be the case that the Logos surely proves. Okay. So, if it's in the same time as itself, it cannot come to be, has been, or will be, past, present, future, becoming, in the same time as itself, because it's equal time as itself. Because they are more or less time. So you can't become older or younger than itself. Because older and younger is simply a distinction. Older is simply a distinction in relation to the younger. And if you're getting older, you're also becoming younger than your same self. Neither can it come to be in more or less time than itself, whereas it must be, become, and have become, and be about to be for an equal time with itself. So whenever this is happening, it's the same self. So whatever it's happening is happening in equal time. Accordingly then, it is necessary and reasonable that each self that exists in time, and which indeed participates of such an existence, has to be the same age as itself, okay? But at the same time also comes to be older and younger than itself. Because participating in time means growing older and younger. So we're learning something about time. Time is somehow growing. I mean, we call it the realm of becoming. Everything is growing or decaying. Older or younger. But if there's only one thing, then the thing that's becoming older and younger then is itself, which would make it the same age. So at the same time, it's a contradiction. The one cannot indeed participate of such experiences. Accordingly then, self does not participate in time, nor does it exist in any time. For surely then, such cannot be the case, as the Logos surely proves. What then? Does it appear that was and has become and was becoming signify participation of time? Was, has become, was becoming. At some period that has to come to be in the past. So now we're really defining what he meant by past. Was, has become, was becoming. So we have was. This is all in relation to past. They're all wases. Was is the past. Has become is the present in the past. Was becoming is the future in relation to the past. So doing something into the future, in the present, in the past. These are all past things, past, present, future for the past. Indeed. What then? Will be and will come to be and will be coming to be present, past will be, present will come to be, future will be coming to be, signify time hereafter in some future. Okay? So you can have past, present, and future in the past and in the future in these two kinds of ways. Will be, will come to be, will be coming to be. But surely then, let's get rid of these highlights. But surely then, does not that which is and that which is becoming signify time which is now present? Is and is becoming. Okay, we could have past, present, and future in the present and future, but we can only have present and in the process in the present. Okay, it's an interesting thing to see. The present either is or is in the process. So you can't really put past and future into the present, as we did with these ones. But surely then, does not that which is and that which is becoming signify time in the present? By all means. Accordingly then, apa, ara. If the one does not ever participate of time in any way, then neither has it ever come to be, or was coming to be, nor was. Hey, if the one that we're talking about, the one self, can't participate in time, then it can't be these past, present, and future in the past. Neither has it ever come to be or become in the present. Neither will it ever come to be or will have come to be, nor will it ever be in the future. So our 3 for the future, our 3 for the past, and our 2 in the present. These are all the aspects or parts of time. He's really outlining what exactly time is. So he's kind of doing 2 things. You can say many things, like he's helping us understand our ultimate purpose, the one self. He's helping us understand the logos, how to talk about the self. He's helping us understand the dialectic, how to use our logos of the self in a conversation with someone like Aristotle to help him. But he's also giving us a fantastic thesis or dialectic on time itself. He's helping us learn what time is. Hey, these are the categories. Come to be, coming to be, or was, a past, present, future of the past. Will come to be, will have come to be, or will be, past, present, future in the future. And in the present, you're either already there or you're in the process in the present, coming to be or become. These are all parts of time, and we've just said the one can't participate in time because that means growing older and younger than something, but there's just one self, so how could you be growing older and younger than yourself? But again, it doesn't make sense either, because if it's the self, then you're in the equal time as itself, so how can you, if it's the one self, there's just one and it's the self, how can you participate in time? Because that would mean what you're relating yourself to is yourself, so there's equal time, but to participate in time means to change or to grow younger and older. That's what time is. It's a progression. That's the world of time, which means by definition, younger and older. Oh, by the way, older is defined relative to younger. So defining the terms. So it's like time separated into 2, older and younger. Define each of those relative to its pair. And now, okay, what are the kinds of participations in time? Well, we have 3 in the past, 3 in the future, 2 in the present. These are all ways of you talking about or thinking about time. So these are all the things that you cannot apply to the oneself. But also, it's a cool dialectic on time. Take this, put it over into your dialectic on time to gain an understanding of time itself. Because, again, in time and out of time are a pair of self or ideas which means they're aspects of being, which means they're knowable, which means you can do a dialectic on it as a process of understanding it and climbing the ladder to experience it. It's a ladder into the mystical experience because it's one of the ideas or beholdings of being, which is another way of saying it's one of the aspects of being. And of course it is, because what's one of the words we use to define being? Eternity. That's some kind of all of time all at once. Eternity. That's what makes the realm of being kind of being. That's what differentiates it from the physical. It's what makes it metaphysical. The fact that it's eternal means it's undying. It can't grow old and die. Now we're seeing why. Which is great for us, because the fact that it's eternal means it's always there for us. Whenever you want to, or whenever you're able to, whenever you're open to experiencing truth, experiencing reality, experiencing eternity. It's eternally there. Good news for us. It would be a crappy measure, a crappy model, a crappy paradigm or archetype if it wasn't eternal, if it was changing. Because then you can say, oh, your country's not being just. Well, hang on a second. Yesterday, I apprehended the model of pure justice, and we are a good and rational society, so we use our mind, logos, dialectic, and philosophy to apprehend and know the model of justice. And because we have integrity and courage and wisdom and temperance, the virtues, we apply them in our everyday world. So we're a good state. So you're telling me that we apprehended justice itself in the realm of being, but we're being unjust? How can you say that? What an outrage. Please have a dialectic with me so we can collect ourselves together the way we do now in the future, now that we are a philosophical or rational humanity. How can we be unjust? We use the paradigm. Well, then the other guy comes along and says, well, actually, yeah, that was yesterday. What? Yeah, that was yesterday. Sorry. You looked at the model of justice, self-justice, and being, which is great, which is what we should do, but you know what? It changes. What do you mean? Well, time. You know how time works. What? You're saying being participates in time? Sorry about that. Yeah, right? And if being participates in time, you know, what does that mean? It means it's growing older and younger. So it's changing. So, yeah, sorry. Justice today is different from justice yesterday. It's grown a bit older. So it's changed. What? But we did so well being just. Yeah, that was yesterday, my friend. Sorry, you're actually an unjust state now. Ugh. You know, sorry to tell you that. But we can look at this and say, well, hang on a second. The one self doesn't participate in time. And being, in which the being of justice, the self of justice exists, is eternity, somehow all of time together. So, it's not going to change. So why do we care? Well, if it's an aspect of eternity, that's, it's tricky talking about being, because you can say, well, it's out of time, so it's always self-justice. But it's also all of time. So in a unique way, it's everything. But that's the realm of being. We're talking about the one self, which doesn't participate in time. But because it's a self term, it's one of the aspects of being, it's a subject for a dialectic. So add all this whole section, this is a kind of mini dialectic on time. Pull it out, add it to your own. Because if time or eternity is something to do with being, then if you do a dialectic on it, it can be a way of not only developing your understanding and your dialectic and your logos, but as bringing your soul to grasp it itself. That's what Parmenides told us in the opening. This is one of the exercises. So, he is giving us a really cool dialectic, defining time as it is and saying the one self cannot participate in time because if it does, it would be older and younger than itself, but at the same time, at the same age as itself, and that cannot be. Doesn't make sense. So, his conclusion, accordingly then, one does not participate of time in any way. It's out of time. Then neither does it come to be, nor was coming to be, nor was. Past, present, future in the past. Neither has it ever come to be, nor become, nor is in the now. Oh, that's interesting. Come to be, become. So he is splitting the present into past, present, and future. Come to be, become. Oh, okay. Before he was talking about the two kinds of is. Right now, you're either there already or you're in the process. But you can understand the now in terms of these three categories of past, present, and future. Because right now you can say I will come to be relative to now. I have become relative to now, or I right now am. So you can unpack this in two ways, or you can say all three. So the one can't be past, present, future in the past, can't be past, present, future in the present. Neither will it come to be, nor will have come to be, nor will be past, will come to be, future, will have come to be, past, or will be present in the future. The will. Therefore, is it possible for it to participate in of ousia in any other way than according to any of those ways? Holy crap.
What? Wow.
First time we're hearing the word ousia since our introduction. In the introduction, they dropped that term, ousia, as the quality that's woven through all of the ideas and through which we can apprehend those ideas ourselves. Actually, let's bring up the text itself because it's a key term and it's the first time it's come up. We talked about the significance of ousia as the eye of the soul. It's the very thing that allows us to apprehend these things, to apprehend being. It's also what we are becoming most like in the exercise of the dialectic. A turning about to know yourself. So, wow, it comes up. Let's find it. Let's find the exact quote where it was mentioned in the opening, because this is a big turning point. Because why? Well, part of having your Sherlock Holmes hat or your adventurer cap on is looking for clues. Clues in the key terms, clues in the structure, clues in the narrative, clues in the order and the hierarchy. If something stands out as not ordered well, it's there for a reason if it's written by Plato. He's not paid by the word. So, and we've been using that looking for differences relative to same as a way of getting clues to do all of our learning about dialectics so far. And now we have one of them. Like in a video game, that part of the wall is a different color than all of the other parts of the wall. Maybe I can bash it down and go into a secret room. Look for something that stands out as different, and ousia is one of those words that's standing out as hasn't been used at all in the first hypothesis. Yet. So, let's find it in the introduction. So Jarvis, bring up the introduction parchment, please. Okay, this is where we saw it in our opening. Okay, Socrates coming in and saying, oh, he's got a big speech here. He's really outlining what he wants to see. I don't want to see one and many and all of these ideas in physical things like stones and wood and such things like that. That would not be wonderful. But if you could divide and separate the ideas that we're doing now apart, that we've been speaking about, such as likeness and unlikeness, many in one, rest and motion, the very terms, the very subjects we've covered already. We're about 8 arguments in, we've covered these. So he wants to separate those apart, which we're doing in every section, separating them apart, defining them, separating them apart, and then blending them together, seeing how they fit together to understand them. So I'd be able to blend together and separate apart selves in themselves, then I would be in wondrous admiration, O Zeno. Okay? So he's asking, this is what I want from you, Zeno. Don't talk about how I am one and many because I'm one man and I've got many parts. That's dumb. I want to see the selves themselves. Talk about them in the realm of being. And we should strenuously labor in the investigation of this. Yeah, it's going to take some time and work. But it would be even more admirable, deserving of more admiration, if anyone could solve the following puzzle, as I said, about this ousia self that is woven into the ideal selves in a manifold way. These ideas in being have ousia woven through them. These ideas in being, these idea selves. Show that just as we have seen about objects we've seen with our faculties of sight, like stone and wood and him. I have many fingers, but I'm one man, so I'm one and many. Ha ha ha. No, that's boring. Do it about the ideas which we grasp by the activity of the logos. So he hasn't learned what the activity of the logos is yet. This is the opening. But then he says, oh, it's the dialectic. That's what we're doing. The activity of the logos is that where we can grasp the ideas. That's what makes it spiritual or mystical, metaphysical. So it makes philosophy, and not an opinion or a theory about the physical world. There's a being that we can grasp, and we grasp it through the activity of the logos. And how do we do that? Well, these ousia selves are woven into the ideal selves. Those ideas in being has ousia woven into it. Ousia is another word for the part of the mind that can turn around and experience itself. That quality, or the sixth sense, or the eye of the soul, is of the same nature as the beings. And in our first hypothesis, he's saying, by the way, that kind of participation in time in a certain kind of way relates to ousia. What does that mean? Even in the realm of being, there is some sort of experience or motion through time or participation in time. There is some sort of movement. There is some sort of internal dynamics, even within beings, that pertains to time. So ousia has something to do with time. We're not going to find out exactly how time relates to the realm of being. That's the second hypothesis. We're not on the realm of being ultimately. We're on the one self. And the one self doesn't even have ousia. We haven't defined ousia in the text, but we have said somehow to do with the 3 kinds of time: past, present, and future, in the past, present, or future. So there's 9. 3 times 3, that's 9. Wait. Yeah, that's right. 3 times 3 is 9. Sure. 9 kinds of ways of participating in time. If it doesn't do that, it can't have ousia. Wow.
Wow.
What the heck does that mean? So this is the first time it's mentioned. I think there's another time where ousia is mentioned. Two times, page 16. Oh, okay. Let's revisit the greatest puzzle, because it's going to be something that might get in our own way. There are puzzles. Socrates he didn't understand that the ousia ideas is beholding. He thought it was a concept, like many materialists think. It's just a concept. Beauty doesn't have its own existence, doesn't have its own ousia. It's just a thought. And that got in his way, because he couldn't distinguish becoming the physical world from being, which is a focus. Many problems like this should happen. If anyone should say that here is the greatest puzzle, by the way, and it's good for us to keep in mind, so we'll repeat it. If anyone should say that the ideal selves cannot be properly known, the idea selves, by being such as we have said they must be, it could not even be proven to anyone that he's mistaken. You're sure that you can't know being, you can't know these truth of beauty and justice self. You cannot be proven that you're mistaken. If it were not the case, on the one hand, that he argues that it could be proven. Okay, these negatives really screw me up. The person, okay, let's read it as it is. If anyone should say that the ideal selves cannot even be properly known by being such as we said they must be, it could not even be proven to anyone that he is mistaken, if it were not the case, on the one hand, that he who argues that it could be proven, the one who is explaining it to him, happened to be experienced in a multitude of particulars, and who is not without talent. Again, these negatives. And on the other hand, he should be willing to follow the proof through many long and elaborate details, but even then, he who contends that the idea selves are unknowable may still remain unpersuaded. That's the biggest human puzzle. You talk to your uncle, and maybe he's even open to the realm of being, but he thinks that they're unknowable, and he's convinced that even if you are practiced and talented, and he's willing to follow your long and elaborate arguments about the ideal selves, if he thinks that they are unknowable, he's going to be unpersuaded. That's the biggest puzzle, according to Parmenides. In what way? Here we go for ousia. In a way that I think you and any other person, Socrates, who would set up the ousia of each idea as subsisting self by self, you must agree in the first place that none of these ideal selves subsist in us, in the physical world. If they have an ousia, self by self, they have a being. Socrates says, for if they did, then how could their ousia still subsist self by self? How could they have their own self existence if it was just in us, as a thought or something? You speak well, Socrates. Is it not also the case that of the ideas that exist in relation to each other, however many there are, they maintain their self-ousia in relation to selves, but not in relation to those existing among us, whether in relation to a certain likeness or whatever else, or whatever way one may set selves up. And we do participate of each and every self to which we apply some particular name. But on the other hand, those beings that exist among us bear the same name as those, and again, selves also exist in relation to our own selves, but not in relation to those ideas. Okay, so these are the three, he outlines the four ways of viewing the selves. That they have a kind of existence like the ideals, that they're connected to them, that they are only connected to each other, to ourselves. So in other words, when we say beauty, we're talking about some sort of connection to the ousia of beauty itself. Or there's another way of looking at things where the word beauty only relates to a common understanding. I say beauty, you know what I mean. And there's another way that even then, beauty is completely in the eye of the beholder. And when I say beauty, you have no idea what I'm talking about because your idea of beauty is completely disconnected. So these are, he outlines four different ways of participation and the ideals, but which reflects, of course, the four categories of the dialectic, if the beings exist. But we're interested in ousia. So he's saying, hey, ousia means they have their self-existence in the realm of being, not in us. And there's one more time ousia is mentioned. Okay, so he goes on to say, it falls upon, Parmenides is saying to young Socrates, it falls to the ability of an individual of very good natural disposition to be able to learn that a certain kind of each idea and that of self-ousia according to itself exists. So on the other hand, they will deserve even more so we've got to learn each of the individual ideas and self-ousia. You'll get even more admiration if after you've made this discovery, you'll be able to teach another person how to thoroughly well distinguish these particulars in an efficient way, what we call the dialectic. I agree with you. You speak according to my intellect, my nous. But nevertheless, in turn, O Socrates, if anyone indeed does not permit, here we go, the ideas of real beings to be, by one, keeping their mind fixed on these recent objections and others like them, especially the ones that say you can't know beings, does not define each particular idea. That's what we've been doing all the way through the first hypothesis, defining each idea and then using it. If they don't do that, they're going to lose their understanding. They'll have nowhere to turn their dianoia. But also 3, permit that the idea of each one of the real beings is always of the self. That's what we've been doing. We have been defining each of the ideas and we've been relating it to the self. How can we use the idea of time, the idea of motion, the idea of rest, the idea of likeness, to understand the self? If you don't do this, you will entirely destroy the power of, what are we doing? Dialectics. Okay? So, we are to understand and define self-ousia. We recognize that ousia runs through all of the beings. It's woven through all of the beings. That we grasp through the activity of the logos. So, ousia is through all the beings that we grasp through the dialectic. Ousia exists self by itself in the realm of being. That was the second part. And you have to understand each idea and self-ousia in the dialectic. Okay, so he's saying you got to use a dialectic to understand ousia, to see how it's woven through all of the beings and it has its own self-existence. So he has mentioned 3 times the importance of ousia. This is the first time that we're seeing it come up in his hypothesis, and we're already 8 arguments in? How far are we? 8 arguments in. So, if our job is to use the dialectic to understand ousia, here we go. Somehow participating in ousia is somehow participating in some kind of change, growing older and younger in some way. Has to do with past, present, and future. Has to do with time. Therefore, it is not possible for it to participate in ousia or any other way according to any one of those ways. It's not possible. Accordingly then, the one in no way whatsoever participates of ousia is not likely. Accordingly then, the one in no way whatever is. Wow. Bombshell.
Wow. Wow.
Whatever the one self is, it isn't is. It isn't existence is. Why? Well, we've already said in our previous argument, for it to exist, it has to exist somewhere. In itself or another. Can't be that. It doesn't participate in parts. Can't be the container and the contained, that's two. Can't be in itself, can't be in another, because that would be two things. Also, you'd be circularly comprehended by that which you're in, and it can't participate in circle, doesn't have form. So in that way, it can't exist. But in this way, even in the way of ousia, it can't exist there either. And we've seen that self-ousia is woven into all of the self-beings. And somehow, that requires some sort of time, past, present, and future. Ousia is a turning about, so there's a process of starting the turn. So in the past, you are going to be turned about. The present, you're in the process of turning about. In the future, you've completed it. So somehow ousia is fundamentally connected to time, which is fundamentally connected to older and younger, fundamentally connected to past, present, and future. And as the one, with reason cannot participate in that, does not participate in ousia, therefore the one in no way exists in the realm of being. It has not come to light. Again, these negatives. Removing highlights and removing notes. Okay. Accordingly then, neither is it in any way such as to be one. This really helps us out. Why? Well, another word for existence is being. What kinds of being can you have? Well, come to be, was being or was? Neither has it ever come to be, nor was becoming, nor was. Neither has it ever come to be, nor become, nor is in the now. Neither will it come to be, nor have become, or will be in the future. Will. Okay. I mean, I bet this. I guarantee this is much easier to read in the ancient Greek. So we have to do a bit of work to see it in the English. But these are the sorts of being. Come to be, will be, or is being. And these are the three variations within. So being somehow is one of those kinds of things. And if, oh my goodness, so many highlights. I should read these notes first. Okay. Accordingly then, neither is it in any way so as to be one. For it would already be by being and by participating in ousia. There's our ousia again. Whereas according to reason, the one is neither one nor is if one must trust in such a logos. Woof. So, if time is connected to ousia, because those are the kinds of being, past, present, future. If you're existing, you're either existing in the past, the present, or the future. If you're participating in time also, you're growing older and younger, or you're the same age. The one can't do either of those, so you can't say it exists. For it would already be by being. So it would already have come to be. It's already being in the present. And by participating in ousia, participation. Again, picking up participation from before. So what is it to do with? Participation is something to do with measures. Equal measure, greater or lesser measure. Now we talked about participation in terms of equal, greater, and lesser, but we didn't actually refer it to any of the self terms. So it doesn't seem like lesser, greater, and equal are a self, a pair, like one and many, whole and part, motion and rest are. So it seems like that whole argument was a precursor to show us what participation is. Participation means participation in either lesser, greater, or equal measure of something. And we said the one can't participate. Okay, so that's kind of principle that we now apply to the self terms in terms of time. What's something that you participate in? Well, time. You participate in time. We've already rejected those in our first argument, but now we can apply it to time. Time is our self term. It's one of those ideas we separate apart to understand the self. So if you can't participate in time, because one, we've showed you can't participate, because that's equal, greater, and lesser. And we've seen how it can apply to time. What's equal, greater, and lesser applied to time? Younger, older, and equal age. Or past, present, and future. So if we ruled out participation, we can rule out past, present, and future. Younger, older, and greater age. Also, here's a quick explanation of how it wouldn't make sense. How can you be older than yourself while at the same time being equal time? Doesn't make sense. So if you can't participate in any way, and you can't participate in time, so it sounds more like time is our first conclusion. Now that we've seen that the one self can't participate by showing it can't be lesser, greater, equal, can't have measures, we can show that it doesn't have, it's not in time. But also, we could say this participation in time is a kind of example about participation itself. We've shown it can't participate in theory. Here is an example, can't participate in time. But what else are we interested in seeing whether or not the one participates in? Ousia. Now that we've established that the one self can't participate, we can say it doesn't participate in ousia, if we trust the logos that we're developing. So this whole argument about participation, lesser, greater, and equal, we used it to say it can't participate in time, but then that was kind of a step to say it can't therefore participate in ousia. There's a question. Was this whole thing about time an example to show our conclusion about participation that we already have? Because our real goal was to say, therefore we can say it can't participate because these are all the ways of being, to be, coming to be, having come to be, either in the past, present, or future. These are all the possible categories of being. Therefore, we can't say it's being in the higher sense. We can't say it's being itself, and we can't say it's participating in ousia. So is time connected to ousia? Well, I think in this argument, it's not so much say that time and ousia are connected, but they both share in something, being. You can be in time, or you can be being itself. You can participate in lesser, greater, equal, or you can participate in ousia. You can participate as younger, greater, equal age, younger, older, equal age, or you can participate in ousia. Within time, there is these categories of being, or you can talk about being itself in ousia. So I don't think time is specifically directly connected to ousia. It's more that they both have participation and they both have being. You can be in time or you can be being. You can use time to understand the qualities of being, past, present, future, will become, becoming, or have become. So these are all the categories of being, using time to understand being, and what is being itself, ousia. So by saying it can't participate in being, by exploring time, you can also say it can't be being. So it can't be ousia, which is being. In the realm of being. That's the nature of being. Equally so, participation. The one doesn't participate in time. Equally so, you can't participate in ousia. What is ousia? It's participating in being, or being is participating in ousia. That's what it is. So we can use our the logos, which is why Aristotle said, if we trust the logos, we're trusting the pattern of reasoning that we developed, and we're trusting it to also apply to everything. We're trusting that it's true and universal. But just as we say, the one self can't participate in time, we can't participate in ousia. Just as we can't participate in measure. Or we can't participate in participation as the one self. Just as we've seen, and also we've used the explanation of time to pull out all of the 9 kinds of variations of being, to say that if participation in ousia is being, the one can't participate in being. So 2 different arguments to show that the one is beyond being or participation in ousia. Long journey, a lot of work, a lot of puzzles, a lot of being stuck, a lot of thinking about it again, turning about upon itself over again. We took time to go through this argument. We started off younger than we are now. We started off less aware of what the hell was going on. We said,
What in the heck are we talking about here?
But we participated in the text. We participated in self-reflecting on the text. We are participating in ousia ourselves. Whoops. And as we participated, we changed through time, and now we are in a state of being right now where we can see better the argument. So we are becoming most like being. And what are we getting from that participation? The logos. We're developing the skill of dialectic, and we're developing the logos, or recognizing or bringing to a life or awakening the logos. How can we awaken? What can we do with that? We can apply it to understanding being, understanding metaphysics, being. What's being? Participating in ousia. It's these kinds of being. But also, we can apply it to objections. Someone says, hey, you're not a good philosopher right now, so you'll never be a good philosopher. Or you don't know the truth now, or I know the truth because my dad told me the truth and I've always known it my whole life and that's just my opinion. So well, actually, here is the logos to show that you have to participate in time. You will grow, you will change. Your ideas should change. Your mind should change. And if you're saying, I can't be a philosopher because I don't know everything right now, that's okay. We are participating in time. That's ousia. And if we do allow ourselves growth, if we do allow ourselves learning, we're allowing ourselves to be most like being, which is most like ousia, which is most like what we want to be in philosophy. which is where truth is. It's through that activity or exercise of the logos that we can grasp these ideas and know truth. Parmenides says that truth will escape if you don't do this. So we can use our logos to address the counterattacks or the objections. You can't know being. Why? Because I haven't done it yet. Well, participate in time. That's how you learn. That's ousia. You can use it to address being. Oh, what's being itself? Well, these are the kinds of being that I've got from my dialectic on time. We also have a dialectic on participation to do with measures, equal, greater, and lesser measures. So in these kinds of the ways that we participate in being. So participate in being. What's ousia? Participating in being. That's ousia. So we can use our dialectic to know being, to address the counterattacks from the world of becoming, and also we can use it as we're doing it now to apply it to the self. The one self in no way whatsoever exists. The one neither exists. The one is neither one nor is. So this is our conclusion about the self. These are the three ways we can apply it. Just as there are three ways of time, past, present, future, there are three ways of using the logos. Becoming, counterattacks. Being, understanding ousia. The self-ousia woven to all of the beings, as Socrates says we must find. And the ultimate, the one self. Now, what's that last conclusion? The one is neither one nor is. Now, what the hell is that for a sentence? Think about that for a sentence. According to our logos, the one is, this is Parmenides talking, by the way. The one is, before or after, the one that is the one self, the one that is that we're applying to the self, to know the self, is neither one nor is. These two words, one is not one nor is. These two words that we're using to point to the one is neither of those two words. Why? Well, let's unpack it. If is being or participating in ousia, can't be that. So whatever it is, that is this is not this is. Not existence. Why? Because it can't participate in itself. Why? Because that would be equal, greater, and less measure than itself. But why else? Well, if it was participating in itself through time, then it would become greater or less, older or younger than itself. But it can't, because it's equal time to itself. So it can't be either of those things. So it can't be in time, and it can't be participation. And by the way, there are, in our exploration of time, there are these kinds of being, past, present, and future. And if being is somehow past, present, or future always, it can't be in those categories of time. So it can't be that kind of is. How can we say it's not one? Well, if we are defining one in relation to is, this is our pattern we've been seeing. Pair of terms defining one in relation to the other in a way that you could say does not apply to the ultimate. So what are the two self terms? We've got one and many, but we've got a different kind of one. One and is. The one in no way whatsoever is. In such a way as to be one. So if we define one as being one, then you are saying for anything to be anything, it has to be it. So the most simple use of anything, the most simple principle, the most simple language is for anything to be anything. Like we talked about, what is the being of whole? Oh, it's all of the parts being there, not being missing. What does it mean to be a part? To be a part of a whole. So even when we were talking about whole and part, which is one of the first fundamental self terms, We use the idea of being in our language. Our whole hypothesis, what is one of the oneself, or what is the oneself? We use the word is. Even more foundational to all of these words is the word is. We've been using it all the way through without seeing it, without pointing to it. Now we're pointing to it. We're saying, hey, our question, what's our hypothesis? What is the oneself? Okay. By the way, we're using this word is a lot. What are we talking about? Well, here it is. An even more primary term. So what are we doing with our adventurous cap on? Pull it up. We are looking for key terms, but also hierarchical orders. So of these key terms, where does one and be, or one and is, sit? Right up at the top. How so? Well, to say one is another way of saying to be one, right? If you are defining being as to be something, and any something is a one, then the definition of is or being is to be one. So you're defining being by one. Anything that is, in any sort of way, is a one. This is one remote. This is one pen. This is one tragically empty coffee mug. Boo. No, everything that is one. So you can define being in terms of one. Define one of the self a pair by its pair. But, okay, how are you defining one? Well, okay, we're doing a lot of work in defining one. But most simply, most primarily, if you say one means to be one. So one is means to be one. Then you're defining one in relation to this, to being. Now, we could say, well, that's too basic because there are many kinds of ones. Part is a kind of one, whole is a one, a chicken is a one. And also, be existence is kind of ambiguous because there's a physical existence and then there's a ousia existence in the realm of being that makes philosophy. So it's kind of ambiguous, but if we ignore the differences, if we ignore all of the particular examples, the chickenness of a one, or the whole, the partness of a one, and we just look at these terms most foundationally, we have discovered in our quest, we have uncovered a gold nugget of truth.
Wow.
Of insight. We have discovered by looking at this, defining one by another, defining this by this, and then doing what? Rejecting both. This section here, according to the logos, okay, that stood out. I don't remember Parmenides specifically using that word and that expression yet. So what happens when it stands out? A clue. Oh, that wall is different color. Maybe there's a secret passage. That statue is unaligned. Maybe there's a gem underneath it. Like in a video game, right? Like any hero. Even a superhero. Superman is part of a super, or Batman is a better one. He can notice things. Notice when things are unjust. Batman's a detective. He can notice the clues, right? We are the archetype of heroes as a philosopher. The logos is our subject. It's our playground. Philosophy, the noblest game. So, what stands out? Trusting the logos. Why would he say that? What if it's a message to us? Hey, you guys trust the logos. Or it could just be a coincidence, but come on. Plato isn't paid by the word. Very rarely, if ever, it's going to be a coincidence. So, trust the logos. Do we have to trust our own logos? Do we have to trust what we have developed in our own logos as we've been unpacking this? If we do, what have we got? Well, we've recognized in our own logos that, there seems to be a pattern. What's the pattern? Finding a pair of sulfur terms. We have balloons. Let's look at it. Let's look at our notes. First argument. One and many. What do we got? Pair of sulfur terms. Define one by the other. Part is in relation to whole. A whole is in relation to no part being missing. Therefore, show how that cannot be the case. If it were a whole or parts, it would be many, not one. But the one self is not whole or parts. And then conclude that it's neither. So, pair of sulfur terms, define part and whole. Define one by the other. And then end up saying that therefore neither can apply to the one self. A second argument. We did not have that. We did not define unlimited by limited. We had our pair of sulfur terms, limit and unlimited. We defined limit with a new subset beginning, middle, of end. So we define limit by a different subset, freeing up unlimited, so therefore we could reject limit but keep unlimited. That was different. It stands out to us. It's unusual. We have a question about it. So unlimited is freed up to be able to be said positively. We then made our own dialectic on unlimited. That would be following the same structure, the logos. Unlimited is defined by its pair. Unlimited is a never-ending series of limits. We give a demonstration, like counting 1, 2, 3, each are limits. Like space, every point in space is a limit in space, but it's infinite. It's unlimited. But the one is one and not many, or many limits. You put any limits. Therefore, the one or the self is not unlimited. This is what would have been if he was following the logos, but he didn't. Because he didn't define one by the other, he didn't have to reject unlimited, that the one is unlimited. Puzzle. What the heck does unlimited mean then? We don't know. He hasn't defined it. That's a question. We've yet to define unlimited. Maybe it's our job to define unlimited. Maybe he's leaving it for us to do. Okay. There's another subset argument. Circular and straight in relation to form, doesn't have shape. The subset of circular and straight, which itself is a subset of extremes and middles. So a subset argument that we can use later. So this is not the pattern of the self-a-pair. Existence. Can exist in no way, just not in itself or in another. Is this a pair? In itself and in another? Is he defining in itself in relation to in another? No, he's not. He's relating it to the previous argument of being circularly comprehended. If you're in something, and we said in our previous argument you can't do that. If it was in itself, it would be the container and the contained. That's 2. Relating it back to a previous argument. This is not the pattern. Existence isn't a self-a-pair. Good to know that it doesn't exist. Interesting. We haven't defined existence. Interesting because what are we on? We're interested in what is means. And is usually means exists. So interesting. So question. A question here, what the hell is exists? You're defining it in this way. But is it a self or pair? If so, what's the pair to is? What's the pair to exist? So another question. What is infinite? Or what is unlimited? Don't know. We might have to do that work. What is the self or pair to exist? Because we're not using itself or pair to define it. We're using this, which felt like a little bit of a cop-out, really. Why don't you just talk about existence in relation to whatever this pair is? Why did you create in itself or in another? What if there's a kind of existence that isn't to do with being in anything? But it did give us in itself or in another. It helped us see the structure of the dialectic that he's using. He's saying, by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, in itself or other, self or other, two categories. I'm using the dialectic. Pay attention. Okay, so what is the self or pair to exist? Don't know. You use a subset argument. Number 5, motion and rest. Can't be in motion, because these are the options. If it's in motion, it's either moving and rotating in place or changing itself, or it's going from one place to another. Can't be in anything. It can't be have parts, so it can't be moving into something else. So that'd be part inside, part outside, more of a part inside until it's completely inside. So that'd be parts if you're moving into something. Resting in something. If you're resting in something, then you're either resting in yourself or in another. From what has already been shown, it's not in anything or itself. Therefore, the one self is never in itself or in another, being led to stand still. Okay. Another variation. He's using the same argument. Being led is to have parts, and being in itself can't be in itself. He's using the same arguments for both. The same subset arguments. Can't be in anything. Can't have parts moving. Can't have parts. He didn't define rest in terms of motion. I don't know, maybe you can't for that one. It's a puzzle. Number 5. Same in other. Right, yeah. Other than itself, other than one, not one. Same as other. So he is saying, he does conclude that it can't be other, because it wouldn't be one. Can't be same as something else, because it wouldn't be itself. But then he does define other in relation to same. He's saying it's other, it's simply other. It's not other in relation to something that's the same. It's not other than anything. It's unique. So even though he is using the previous arguments we've had about, he's saying if it's the same as something else, it wouldn't be itself. So that's a axiomatic statement about the self. If it was other, it wouldn't be one. So these are axiomatic about one or self, which is cool. If you're other than yourself, you wouldn't be one. If you're the same as someone else, you wouldn't be yourself. But for other, you're not other than anything. You're not other than something that could have been the same as you. You're not other from another. You're simply other. This was a kind of other that is not in relation to something. We built upon that. If you experience that, like and unlike, self terms, separating them off. So we can so we can either define one by the other if it's fundamental, like define whole by parts, or limit by unlimit. Or we can use the same argument that has that used to both. So we are applying the same argument to both. So they either defined fundamentally to each other, like whole and part, or they follow the same reasoning. Like this one. Like means to experience the same. Unlike is to experience other. Same. Same reasoning applied to both. So they're on the same level. They're both experiencing same or other. So in that sense, they are being defined by each other, in that they have the same arguments applied to their definition, or of the same level, maybe more accurate to say. Equal and unequal. Measure is the common term to do with participation. If you participate in something equal, you're neither lesser or greater. If you are participating in something lesser and greater, you're not equal to it. So these are being defined by each other, but also with the common principle of participate. So there's a common term applied to both, while each being understood relative to each other. For this one, it's participate. For likeness and unlikeness, it's experience. Common term applied to each, and the differences are in relation to each other. If you're experiencing same, you're like. If you experience the other half, different, you're unlike. So you can say these are understood as halves of a whole, or not halves of a whole because there's greater and lesser, but relation to each other, which is a dialectic, right? Something in relation to another thing. Dialectic is one in relation to self. So what are we getting? We're getting a logos developing. The lesser in relation to the whole as a definition, or with a key term or a common term applied to both from a previous argument. If you say a whole is in relation to its parts, you can't apply it to the oneself. But if you don't, like unlimited, you didn't relate it to, you didn't define it in relation to its lesser, then it maybe can be applied to the oneself. Same thing with likeness, same. They're in relation to each other with a common term from our proofs, experience. So we're giving rise, common argument from our previous arguments, same and other. Take that with you, we can get like and unlike. So again, in relation to each other and in relation to a common argument, and also giving birth to a common term, experience. So we can ask the question, what would it be like to experience the oneself? It's not like or unlike anything. In fact, we have a theory, well, if there is a way of defining the greater, not connected to the lesser, we might be able to say, it's not unlike anything, it's not like anything. By the way, if your definition of unlike doesn't require you to compare it to anything like, if you're not saying it's not unlike anything, but it's simply unlike, maybe that can help you answer. Just like, if you're saying other or different is not different from something the same as it, but simply different or unique, that could be a positive description of the oneself. Is our hypothesis. We also recognize that we're getting given clues. He will give us a pattern. Shepherd is to sheep like king is to people. But he will leave stuff out. We have to look for these question marks, find the unsolved patterns, and figure it out ourselves. That's what it means to be a good teacher. And so we have a couple of questions. What exactly is the definition of unlimited? Didn't answer that. Is this a logos pattern that if you do not define one by the other, you can have the greater applied to the self? What other questions do we have? We had, what is the definition of unlimited? Oh yeah, what is existence? What is the self a pair to existence? Exist, that sounds like a high term, but what's its pair? Not exist? Unexist? Pre-exist? What is it? Don't know. So 2 questions, 2 things left out. We've established a pattern and we've noticed 2 things left out. That's called abduction, philosophical abduction. So, why do we care? Who cares? That was a big lot of words. Who gives a crap? Well, Parmenides is saying, trust in the logos. Trust in that logos. To do what? Understand this crazy statement which stands out as weird. What's the logos? Look for things that stand out as weird. Oh, we're almost at the end. We're on the last page. Holy crap. So this might be one. So again, the structure is important. Hierarchical ordering and structure. If this is the last paragraph, and it seems to be, this might be one kick-ass statement. If the opening is, what is the oneself? And we end up with, oh, it neither is nor one. How does that ending part, how does that conclusion, why is that conclusion significant? It is significant, it is where it is. Why? Ordering, hierarchical ordering is significant. Why is that the last statement to finish on, if it is? Or in the last paragraph? Think about it. How the heck can you understand this sentence? The one is neither one nor is. That's gobbledygook. The chicken flies neither chickenly or by flying. What? I mean, if I was to I would try to create a silly example. The chicken that flies neither is a chicken nor flies. I had to add extra words. That's how brilliant this is. It's how precise. Even more so in the Greek. Look at the Greek. One term, one term, one term, one term. This word, it's completely symmetrical, except for this, the. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can't be more precise in your language. It's the height of human thinking. But also, you can't have a higher topic to which to apply your language. The one that is. What is? Aren't you curious about what reality is? Or what you are? How about answering both at the same time? Okay, the one self. His hypothesis from himself, of the one self. Okay, what is the one that is the one self? So we're using the term one to define the self. The one is something that you mash together with self to define the word self. Okay, that's what we're after. By the way, the one that is, that's what we're after. Yeah. The one that is. We've got all these qualities, right? The one that is not in motion, is not at rest, is not a shape, is not in a place. Okay, we've got all this stuff. That it's usually it's what it's not. Doesn't have limits, okay? It's not the same, doesn't experience likeness or unlikeness, or it's not the same, it's not different. Okay, what is it? It's not one. What? Or is. Huh? What the hell are you talking about? One is not one, nor is? But what about all the work we've done? Why didn't you just start with that? And say, well, the one is not one nor is. Well, that's nihilism. Nothing. I was depressed for a year. That's what I thought about everything. That's not fantastic. I feel like throwing a rock at you and saying that rock that hit you neither was a rock nor hit you. That's what I feel like saying to you who says that to me. You're speaking crap. Oh, thumbs up. Or it stands out as being very precise, very simple, very elegant, and very important as the conclusion. What has he been teaching us? I start with the statement, this is what I want to prove. And I start with a simple definition, a simple demonstration, or I unfold it a little bit. If you don't follow, I'm going to unfold it more into divisions. From all that, I'm going to synthesize it together and apply it back to the start to show what I intended to prove, to show what I was wanting to define at the beginning. That's the dialectic. I use it over and over and over again in each one of these arguments. Do you think I'm going to drop the ball at the end? Do you think the whole isn't going to be representative of that same principle? Do you think I'm a dummy? Says Parmenides. If not, then you have to trust the logos. Trust that structure and pattern and order you've been developing. What's that mean? That last statement somehow has to be a synthesis of everything that you've done so far. Synthesize it together, and it somehow has to go back to the start. It has to synthesize everything and also explain the thing you're wanting to define. What do we want to define? The one of the one self. What the heck is reality? Is self? What is self? Come on. What's the one that is the one self? Everything we take with us has to answer that question. And it has to answer the question. It can't be a rejection of the question. That would be stupid. It wouldn't be the greatest book never read if it was that dumb. His hypothesis is nonsense. Right? I'm going to hurl a chicken at your face and then say, neither was that a chicken, neither was it hurled. No, we're not going to do that. That would be mental. Okay, so what are we looking for? We have a question. What is its self-a-pair? Can we find a self-a-pair in this statement? Well, thankfully we don't have many words to look through. Can you see one? How about one and is? Okay. Now what do? Define one by its other and then reject both. Neither is it in such a way as to be one. The one, no way whatsoever is. Are we defining to be against one? Does it work? What does is mean? Well, to be something, to exist, to be. Oh, we've got, by the way, we can understand exist or is in terms of, we've got is, be, and exists. 3 words that we can play with. Now that we've defined these are all the kinds of bees. These are all the kinds of participation. We've just developed them. Right? And we've also got all these other kinds of being. In motion, in rest, to exist in itself, in another, and so on and so on. We've got a whole lot of understanding of kinds of isness and being, because we've been using isness all the way through. Is it in motion? It is not at rest. It is unlimited. Is has being. So whatever we could say, well, our most fundamental terms is one and self. Sure. And we've used all the self-logos to talk about it. And in doing so, we've created a beautiful set of self-logos terms, even in order: whole, part, one and many at the start, whole, part to follow, limit and unlimit, motion and rest, same and different, like and unlike, in time and out of time. We've got a brilliant set of pairs, right? That follow in its own hierarchy that's being used here. Okay? Brilliant. But all the way through, what have we been using? One and self. And a secret other word we've been using all the way through is. It is not a part. Or is it a whole? Is it unlimited? It is unlimited. It is not a limit. Is. So not only have we been defining these two terms, we've been developing an understanding of what the word is means. So when he says, the one is neither one nor is, that's not a dumb statement. That word has heaps involved in it. Everything we've been developing, dividing, we can synthesize into two things: a kind of one and a kind of is. We need them both. Okay? Now, we've also been developing a structure. Are we defining one in terms of the other? To be anything, you would be a thing, and anything would be a one. So we can create our own self-logos on this. We can do our own. We can finish it off. Hey, shepherd is to sheep, as to cart is to tent, king is to people, is to silence. We finish it out. What is a cart to a king in the king set? What is a tent to a king in the king set? We finish it. We are being told to finish it. Okay, finish it like we did with unlimited. Finish it. Okay, let's do it. Oh, we're Parmenides now. And we say, oh, hello, young Aristotle. Oh, hello. By the way, I'm going to show that the one is neither one nor is. Happy? What? No, that doesn't make any sense. You're crazy. I'm going to show that this chicken I'm hurling at your face is neither chicken nor hurled. Haha. No, Aristotle. Okay, I will give a demonstration. Or I'll divide it up into the arguments. So let's do the logos we've been learning. Trust in such a logos. Trust in such a logos. If one is to be anything, if anything is to be anything, the word is means a thing, right? Right? If it wasn't a thing in some kind of way, we couldn't say it is. It would be non-existence. Right? Right. Okay, fine. Aristotle says, it seems likely. And for anything to be a thing, it's one thing. Right? One pen or one pad or one horribly empty coffee mug. Tragically, sadly empty coffee mug. Isn't it? Aristotle says, it has so come to light. Ah, good. We should pick up his words, by the way. Oh, would it also come to light that by the way, if we want to understand what one is, we have to say what one is. We have to use the word is at the end of that sentence. What do you mean? Well, to define a one, we are saying it is something, right? Right. So we're defining one by is, right? And we define is by some kind of one, right? Okay, right. But didn't we show that the one cannot exist anywhere because it would have to be in itself or in another? That was shown by the logos, Parmenides. Oh, so it can't exist anywhere. By the way, it can't experience existence because we showed it can't have experience, right? Because to experience is to be like or unlike, and that would be to experience same or different. And we showed that it can't be same as itself or another, or different from another. And it can't experience those things and therefore be like or unlike. So we can't be an experience of existence. So it has come to light from our reasoning, Parmenides, says Aristotle, If it's existing, right, it has to be emotional rest, right? Either of those two. Didn't we say it can't be that? Oh. For it to exist, it has to have some sort of shape, right? But it can't have shape because it would have to participate in circular or straight. And we said it can't do that. Holy crap, you're right. If we're talking about its existence, we're limiting our definition of it in some way, but we said it can't have a limit. Oh, Jesus, you're right. I mean, they wouldn't say Jesus back then, so that doesn't make sense. Oh, Zeus, you're right. So if existence is to be one in some kind of a way, we can't apply it to the self. So it has come to light. By the way, for one to be, it would have to be in some way. To say that one is, and is to be, it'd have to be in some way, right? Right. And that would either be in the present or past or future, right? That would be some sort of participation in time, right? Absolutely. But we said that the one can't participate in time. So we did. In fact, to be something, if we're defining one as one is something, then it would have to participate in something. But didn't we say it can't participate in measure or big, lesser, greater, or equal? Just like in time, it couldn't participate in younger, older, or equal age. We did. So neither can we say the one that is, nor is one. Wow. So it follows from our reasoning, our logos. Do we say goodnight? Is that the end of it? Hang on a second. Notice something unique about the word unique? Notice anything different about the word different? Notice anything strange about the word unlimited? So long as we define, well, first of all, we've discovered something, a self, a pair, in which you can define one by the other, and in doing so, you can say that neither applies to the self. The one self is neither one nor is. With this use of the word one and is. But we've discovered something special, haven't we? If we trust in the logos, we saw something. There was 2 instances, which is enough to establish a pattern, of defining one of the self a pair specifically by being unable to be participated by the other to create a positive. Different, so long as it's not different as anything, but unique, is the one self. Unlimited, that does not participate in a series of limits. When we finished it ourselves. What does that mean? We also carry with us a question. When we got to our dialectic on existence, that's one question, all right? What is that unique way of using the logos? And we can use the word unique because it can be applied to the self, because Parmenides says there is a kind of unique that can be applied to the one self. Also, another question, which was, what is the self a pair to exist? We didn't use it. We could have. We could imagine how we could do our own dialectic. Say, oh, by the way, does exist have something to do with not existence or something? Instead, we related it to being in itself or another, which seemed like a bit of a cop-out. Handy, because we can limit it does not exist in that kind of a way. So we have a question. What is this weird pattern, and what is the partner to exist? And we might have just enough to answer both. If so, we might have enough to answer this question: what the hell is this for a conclusion? What is that statement? How does it relate to Usia, who only just now came up right at the end? And how does it relate to this? And how does it relate to the final step of the dialectic, synthesis analysis? Have those questions. I hope you're puzzled. I hope you've got something to think about. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back and jump into this a bit more. Hope you stick around. We're back and we are caffeinated. Did you have anything to think about? Do you see the significance of this question? Holy crap. It all comes back, this whole first hypothesis, all this work we've done, and everything we've learned about what we're doing from the introduction has come down to this. What is going on? What's going on here? Well, we have finished with a possible hypothesis here, a possible discovery of a self-a term that isn't being made explicit and therefore it's for us to do. One and is. And we rejected both, so that fits. So long as we're defining one in relation to the other, you reject both to the self. Now, how can you say the one is neither one? Because we've been developing an understanding of the one, and we have got some positive terms. It's unlimited, it's different, it's unique. So how can you just reject our understanding? It doesn't make sense. That's not a synthesis. That's not a synthesis of one. That's just a rejection. That's just a contradiction of ourselves. What about the other word, is? A word we've been using all the way through. Maybe what we're synthesizing is the word is. Can we go back through all of our arguments and see them as somehow building an idea of what is? So that we say if the one is, then it's not that one. Because it can't be is. It's not that one, nor is it is. Has that what he's been building this whole time? An idea of what is? An idea of what it means to be or exist in any way at all? Let's go through. Let's see if he has. Let's see if that's there. First argument. Let's apply our hypothesis to our argument in a reflective Usia way. Let's synthesize and analyze. If one is, there's our is word, okay, straight off the bat. If one is, first section. So we are looking for if one is. If one is. What was our conclusion? The one is neither one nor is. Well, that you can't just reject yourself. You can't say that. So if one is, could we do this? Is that a self-a pair? If one is, it's not many. Maybe the self-a pair was not just one and many. Maybe there's a one is self-a pair. Okay, hypothesis. Let's see. If one is, it's not whole nor part. Whole is that which has no parts. So, does it is to exist? Something to do with a whole and a part? To exist? To have limits? So, are we defining some idea of what it means to exist that we just say the one is not that one? If the one is, it's not many, therefore it can't be a part in a whole, can't be a part because they are manys. Therefore, the one of the one self is not a whole or part. So are we at one time defining the one self and at the other time defining what it means to be is? If something is, would you say it has a limit? The one does not have a limit. It is not circular nor straight, nor has shape or form. Is an idea of is or exist or to be to have a shape or a form? Can we add that into the possibilities of existence? If you exist, you're probably a whole or a part in some way. Probably have some sort of limit to define you. Probably have some sort of shape. These are possibilities. Hey, maybe you don't have a limit, but you've got a shape. If you exist in any way, oh, here we go. If it exists in no way, the one exists in no way. That sounds like our conclusion. In itself or in another. If you exist, you're either in something or in another. So we're building a definition of existence. A whole and a part in some way. A limit in some way. Shape in some way. Form in some way. In itself or in another in some way. In something in some way. In a place. By the way, in that place, you're moving in some way or you're at rest in some way. You're either going to be one of those. We can reject it for the one that is the one self. But at the same time, are we defining existence? Same and other. If you exist in some way, are you either the same as yourself or other than someone else? Or can't be other than yourself, obviously. Maybe? If you were changing? Does existence allow you to be the same as yourself? Other from others that you're not? Is this what existence could or must entail? Because the one self is not that, but it is something. It is something simply other. So we have this idea of self and other or different as the one or self. If you're the same as something else, you're not the self. If you're other, then yourself is not one. So we're using one and self of our dialectic to show how we can't be same and different. From same and different, we build into like and unlike, because like and unlike are experiencing. Like is to be experiencing the same. So to exist is to have some sort of experience. Are we defining existence? And from that, we can say, oh, by the way, measure. Are you participating in something if you're existing? Are you participating in existence? Does that mean you're equal or unequal or lesser and greater level of existence? If you are equal to one measure, is that a kind of existence? You're participating in yourself. You're participating in existence. And if you're developing or growing or changing, you are becoming lesser or greater. Is that some sort of movement? Some sort of ousia movement? So, while we're saying that the one does not participate, are we at the same time defining what it means to exist? Oh, we haven't written up time. So we're in the text for time. So, We take that idea of participation, the one cannot participate or have experiences. We take that with us to say that it cannot grow or develop or change in time. We built up the idea of participation through the logos. So we've got it. Doesn't participate. We talked about experiences. We take them both. We apply it to time. But it's not in time. We take the idea of time and we apply it to being. Is existence related to being? So now all the way through, all the way down to our final argument on time, we have finally got an idea of being. To understand time, we needed the idea of experience, to participate in time. We needed time to understand being. We needed participation to understand time, to participate in older or younger or same age. We needed experience to understand participation, which is likeness and unlikeness. We needed same and different to understand experience or unlikeness and likeness. We're developing as we go. So we're finally coming to the idea of what's our conclusion through all this development. While each of the arguments are self-contained, there is a progression through the whole, culminating in what? Being. And what do we conclude about being? Ousia. So everything we've developed, whole, part, form, inner place, motion, rest, in time, same, different, like, unlike, experience, equal, greater, lesser, participation, measure, time, being equals ousia. Have we been developing an entire dialectic reasoning on what being or ousia is? Accordingly then, the one in no whatsoever whatever participates ousia. Accordingly then, the one in no way whatsoever is. The conclusion, synthesis, the conclusion of everything in the first hypothesis, ousia, participates in ousia. What's the next step to synthesis? Analysis. Apply that synthesis to the term, to the first term. What was our question? If the one is participates in ousia, the one in no way participates in ousia, ara, accordingly then, the one in no way whatsoever is. What does that mean? He's saying the word is means participate in ousia. They're equal, they're the same, they are equivalent. This is a definition of this. The whole way through, we have been developing a definition of is, culminating in ousia, very close to what it means to be, which has to do with participation, like in time, which has to do with experience, which has to do with same and other. Also related to being in motion or at rest, also relating to having a shape, also relating to being in something, existing in something, itself or another. Unlimited and limited, also to do with it. Whole and part to do with it. Is. Whole first hypothesis is not only pointing to a kind of one, it's also defining what it means to be is, because that's the final synthesis, participates in ousia. Analysis, accordingly then, the one in no way whatsoever is. What's the one of the oneself? It's not is. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
So what? Well, what next? We just read Aristotle is saying something that's where he says, what next? So I was trying to find it. It's funny. Okay, I can't find it. Yeah, so what? So we have gone all this way through this great sea of logos with all this effort that was, being encouraged to do by the greatest human minds. And we've ended up with some kind of definition of what is. And so we ask, so what? What next? Now we have an understanding of one of the terms that we define to be or is against one. If we say to be one is what it means to be one, and what to be means is being some kind of one, then we can say the one is neither one nor is, by finally not participating in ousia. So whatever existence is, whatever it means to be, in some way is ousia. Everything that exists in some way is participating in ousia. Wow.
Wow.
The one, neither one nor is. But we have been saying that the one is something. It just not is. We have the whole time. Yeah, we've been developing an understanding of existence. We've also been developing an understanding of the one. Can't have parts. Is unlimited. Is unique. There's more to the statement. What do? Define the ultimate by the greater in a way that cannot be touched by the lesser. Let's keep reading and see if we get any more clues. If it can't be in all of those ways in time, it cannot participate of ousia, or in any other way according to any of those ways of being. It's not possible. Accordingly, then, the one in no way whatsoever participates of ousia. Not likely. Accordingly, then, ara, the one in no way whatsoever is. So it has not come to light. Accordingly, then, neither is it in such a way as to be one. Is one, defining is not just all the way we've developed up until now, but against one. It can't be one. For it would already be by being and by participating in ousia, which we've just said we can't do. Therefore, conclusion, according to reason, the one is neither one nor is. If you're defining one by being one, you can't say it's one. If you're defining is by is one, or participating in ousia, or being, then you can't say it's that either. If one must trust in such a logos. I dare say so, says Aristotle. But could any non-being be of self? Of the one which is not? Or could any non-being belong to this self? How could it? Oh, he's saying, by the way, when we say the one neither is nor is one, we're not saying it's not being. The self-appear to being is not non-being. We're not just negating it. We're not saying there was no chicken that I threw at your head. There was a chicken. How could it? Accordingly then, there is neither name, nor logos, nor any other knowledge, nor perception, nor opinion that can be attributed to self. What? What about the name oneself? What about all the logos we've developed, including the positives? But also understanding how it's different from things in existence was helpful. Aren't we developing a knowledge? We may not be able to see it with our physical perception, but aren't we developing a pretty strong opinion from this exercise? Accordingly then, following this, you can't have any of those things. What? I'm depressed. Accordingly then, neither can it be named nor spoken. By the way, it's not come to light for Aristotle. In other words, you can't have those things. Accordingly then, neither can it be named, nor spoken of, nor be opined of, nor be the object of knowledge, nor do the real beings have a perception of self. Ooh. The real beings. Interesting. It's not likely. Therefore, is it possible that these conclusions have to be in this way about the one? To me, at least, it certainly does not appear to be in this way. What does that mean? He doesn't get it. I don't know how that can be. How can we say it's not named or opined of? Didn't we call it the one self? Didn't we create a good opinion about it right now? And the real beings don't have a perception of self. That's curious. I mean, if knowledge is being, then it would follow that the real beings don't have a perception of self. But named? Spoken of? No logos? What are we talking about? We are naming it. We have developed a strong logos. We have attributed some things like different and unlimited to self. What are you saying? These things follow this conclusion. This is one of these conclusions that people with the greatest puzzle that think there's no being or no knowledge of being like to post on Facebook. Socrates says he's wisest because he knows he does not know. Therefore, there's no such thing as knowledge, therefore no real beings. Therefore, leave me with my ignorant opinions and the harm it causes me in the world. They'll use this as well. Oh, we said that the one self, the whole object of my whole hypothesis, that I swam through greater sea of logos, which was a noble quest, and great admiration is for someone who's to lead someone through this, took all this work. It was the logos. It's through the logos we can grasp truth. We said all these things to begin with, but now we conclude in a way that contradicts ourselves? There's no logos, no name, no perception or opinion? What? Also, it's not one nor is? Didn't we just say the one is? Oh, here's a clue. I'm not saying it's not non-being. I'm not saying it's non-being. It's not non-being. When I say it's not is, I'm not saying it's anti-being. What then are you saying? If it's not is, and is being and participating in Usia, you're saying it's not non-being. What are you saying? And how can you make these conclusions? What are you talking about, man?
What in the heck are we talking about here?
This is a puzzle. Where do we go from here? It's not non-being, but it's not is. What does it mean to say it's not is? But in a unique way, a different way, simply different way. And what is he talking about here when he says there cannot be name or logos or knowledge or perception or opinion attributed to self? What does that mean? There's a puzzle here. He's saying it's not is, but it's not non-being. Solve it. There's no logos for it. Well, we just did a logos for it. Solve it. Do you get it? Nope, not me, says Aristotle. I don't get it. The beings don't have a perception of self. Well, that might be true if it doesn't have Usia, it doesn't participate in Usia, and Usia is beings. You can also even say it's not object of knowledge if object of knowledge is beings, but there must be something. If it's the ultimate goal and destiny of man, and your hypothesis, this is what you started with, This is the self. I am the self. You are the self. We are the self. It is self. Reality is self. Can't be nothing. Can't be non-being. Is it like the nihilists say who want to reject the mind and say, well, it's nothing, so then just shut up? Oh, look, Socrates says he's wisest because there's nothing to know, so there's no being, so just opinions. Equally so, Parmenides says you can't have a name or logos or knowledge of the self, so the most ignorant among us are equally wise as the wisest Parmenides. That's what they might say. Of course, that would be insane. That's not what is being said. Be careful, that's the objections, the counterattacks from those who don't understand the significance of the logos, the exercise of logos of dialectic, and how this is how we grasp truth. This is how we grasp truth. You can't say this is how you grasp truth and have this conclusion. There's something going on here. There's a puzzle here. What's the puzzle? What's going on? Something weird is happening here. We have a puzzle to solve. How can we take everything that we've been developing so far and solve this puzzle? I don't know yet. I hope you're puzzled. I hope you have some hypotheses. I hope you test them out. I hope you have some questions. Let's come back to this tomorrow. I hope you enjoy your day being puzzled about this. And I hope you share your insights if you have any. Please do. I hope you find this as cool and fascinating as I do. And yeah. Stay puzzled, stay wondering, you philosophers. Hold your question, ye with a quest. Thanks for joining me. I will see you next time.